Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings, and now I guess some other stuff too, now that the season is regrettably over, which takes a fairly significant toll on our listener numbers almost immediately.
Yeah, no way.
But at any rate, thank you for listening. I'm your host, Dusty O'Connell, joined as per usual by useful human, in-house analyst, and blogger extraordinaire, Arif Hassan. How are you, Arif?
Good, I'm good. I'm glad I got my title back.
Well, you remained useful. I just was less useful in that I did not occur to me to mention it last time.
Well, I mean, if I don't remind you well enough that I'm useful, like if I don't through my actions demonstrate usefulness, I think that you forget, and I think that in part falls on me. You're right; it's mostly your fault, but I have to take some of the blame for not being useful enough that week.
Well, and even though nobody listened to it, we had a pretty good show last week. It was pretty tight, I think.
It was a great show, and everybody who listens to this show should download that last show again, but through a different platform, so that our numbers are up.
No, don't do that. We're not into totally artificial inflation. It's
totally kidding.
But you know what you could do is tell a friend about Norse Code. You know, because we do a fair amount of good content, I would say, in the off season. We're fairly exhaustive with the draft, and we have connections to cool people like Justice Mosqueda and Luke Inman. And it's great to kind of spread the love, I think. And it would be nice to have, some new ears listening to Norse Code every now and then. Because even though official question asker Tommy Gunn is very good at his job, it would be nice to, have some fresh blood in the mailbag every now and then. But mostly I just want to thank all the existing listeners for sticking with us throughout the off season. Because you guys know what's up. You know it's still the good stuff. The approximately half of you that have not listened to the last episode are really missing out. And regrettably, they're probably missing out on this one as well.
They'll learn.
or they won't. Ignorance may be bliss for them, but they just don't know what they're missing. One small programming note before we get rolling. What with the off season, we are kind of going down to a 1 episode per week format. And we are hoping to do a panel show pretty much every week with me and James and Arif and potentially guests. But we expect to be able to do that on Wednesday nights. So shows will start dropping on Thursday. So you can end your week on Thursday or Friday with a fresh episode of Norse Code. This week, some Vikings news, a hiring in the league that is not Vikings related, but of note, I would say, and then a conference championship preview before a rather large and interesting mailbag, I think will be the order of the day today.
Right.
So let us dive right in. Actually, we can start with a couple of mailbag questions that set up the kind of coaching staff changing very neatly. Logan Reed writes in with an email question. What's the difference between a running backs coach and a running game coordinator? I'd never heard of the latter, and I don't think most teams even have one, or am I ill-informed?
Well, as of a day ago, 2 teams had a run game coordinator by title. The Jacksonville Jaguars promoted the run game coordinator to defensive coordinator because he was also the defensive line coach. Kind of weird. But yeah, I think of it this way. The person who designs the running plays then also kind of has a call on what the running play will be if they've determined, in fact, that this play is going to be a run. And, it's kind of weird to think about it that way because you think, hey, the offensive coordinator looks at his play sheet, calls a play, it goes right to the quarterback. It's actually a significantly less complicated system than a lot of people conceive of and compared to some of the systems that have existed around the league. So we all obviously remember Jim Harbaugh with the San Francisco 49ers. And that was a, shockingly successful team given the assemblage of talent and personalities that seemed to have populated both the front office and the coaching staff, and to some extent the players, because Colin Kaepernick seems to have gotten worse. But one of the issues that they had is that they actually had 4 different people calling the plays, and Jim Harbaugh had a veto on all of them. And so it was actually a really, really complicated play calling system, and it was difficult to determine who had what responsibility. There was a red zone play caller, there was a running game play caller, a passing game play caller, and then there was Harbaugh. And you could just, veto or whatever. And you think that takes a lot of time. You've got about 40 seconds, maybe 25 seconds to get the play actually down to the quarterback. So you don't actually have 25 seconds. You like 10 seconds. But 10 seconds is actually a lot of time. Because I think they cut the mic off at like 15 seconds before the play clock winds down. Anyway, a run game coordinator is actually something that the Vikings already kind of had in Jeff Davidson. Norv has constantly employed throughout most of his offensive coordinating career a person who would do all the run work for him, and so that they would be the ones that design the plays. And a lot of people, Musgrave did this actually, or Musgrave had Jeff Davidson do this for him too. And when I was telling a lot of people about this, when the Raiders hired Musgrave, a lot of people were like, really annoyed that I was like, well, Jeff Davidson was his run game coordinator, because, they wanted to believe that Musgrave was responsible for like the 2012 season, right? Because they're Raiders fans and they just hired Musgrave. And they were like, well, of course the offensive line coach has input. And it's like, that's not what I mean. They literally design the plays and it goes into the playbook, what the run game coordinator does. And I imagine that that's what Tony Sparano is going to do for the Vikings, going forward. Because the running scheme is not dependent on who the offensive coordinator is, Norv Turner. It's dependent on who the offensive line coach is, which is why the Vikings had a zone running scheme and a man blocking scheme and a gap blocking scheme and a trap blocking scheme. And a run game coordinator not only just designs all those plays, but for a lot of people, for a lot of teams, will be the one who calls those plays in those situations. Dallas sort of had it for a while. They have a pass game coordinator. There's a couple of teams that have pass game coordinators. The Eagles actually had it. Pat Shurmur was the pass game coordinator for the Eagles. So it's not unusual to have a coordinator for a specific aspect of the game, but it's not a super common occurrence either. And I imagine that a run game coordinator will also be involved in doing some coaching for the running backs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they also had like a position coach just for running backs. And a position coach, I think we all know, just like coaches the running back in terms of like technique and like what they're supposed to do and, all that coaching stuff that we normally associate with coaching.
So the moratorium on running backs coach Kirby Wilson interviewing with other teams has been lifted now that his contract is officially expired. And the first thing he did was go interview in Cleveland. So it sounds like that's going to be a thing. A couple of questions sprung from that. Logan Reed continues in his email. Also, who do you see as a good replacement for Wilson? I heard that since lateral moves among coaches can be blocked by their current teams, it's likely that we would get a former college coach. And Zen Cupid at ZenDBP writes us, who are the Vikings likely to get for a running back coach now?
I'm not actually entirely sure. I probably should have done a little bit more research on this. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got, the former Philadelphia Eagles running back coach if he had been fired along with the rest of the Chip Kelly staff. Not just because of Pat Shurmur, but which we'll talk about in a second. But because, obviously the DeMarco Murray problem was a huge problem, but I think aside from that, you kind of want to give them credit for how well Ryan Matthews did and how well LaShawn McCoy did with them and stuff like that. It's part of the reason that Bill Lazor got hired in Miami. I wouldn't be surprised if the running backs coach at Miami actually was hired. Whoever that is, so long as they weren't still on contract or whatever. Just based on how good Lamar Miller is. Even if Lamar Miller was underutilized by Lazor himself in the play calling, I think that Lamar Miller was very good. Often a good coach will not necessarily produce a good player in the most recent year. And so that's something that you kind of have to remember. Like if they hire a running backs coach, or if they move someone from like quarterback coach to running back coach or something, you don't necessarily have to look at the most recent running back or quarterback that they've produced to see if they're good. So I don't really have a huge opinion on this. I wouldn't be surprised if they got a running back coach that's really familiar with man blocking schemes, which would take the Philadelphia coach out of the equation. It would take the Miami coach out of the equation, just so that they could preach the kind of patience that you need, because it's a different kind of patience with zone running versus man running. The kind of patience that you need, or the specific footwork that you want, or how you want them to attack the line of scrimmage. Because like in man schemes, you want running backs to attack the scrimmage kind of square up to the line of scrimmage, whereas in zone schemes, you kind of want the running back to attack sort of diagonally, laterally, and stuff like that. So things like footwork will change, things will change, and they'll probably get a running back coach that's pretty used to man schemes, or they might. I shouldn't say probably. They might. And I haven't really done a ton of research into that, so I don't know. Maybe the former San Francisco, running back coach. I mean, they're a flex run scheme, so I wouldn't be surprised. They've done a pretty good job, I think, recently. So yeah, I haven't really researched this, but those are my thoughts on it.
You still managed to have several.
Yeah.
Also in the news, Pat Shurmur interviewing with the Vikings, former Eagles former Eagles offensive coordinator. Looks like we're doing kind of a crisscross sort of situation, because Brad Childress is now going to be the Eagles offensive coordinator.
No, that's no longer true. He's going to be the Chiefs offensive coordinator. It was just a nasty rumor spread by a radio jockey that Brad Childress was going to be the Eagles offensive coordinator. But today they announced that Brad Childress is going to be a co-offensive coordinator with Matt Nagy, the former quarterbacks coach of the Chiefs offense, of which they will have exactly zero power. Andy Reid will still call all the plays and design all the plays. So good luck, Brad Childress, having no power again.
Well, I was going to make a clock mismanagement joke, but they do still have Andy Reid driving the bus. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's where Brad Childress got his clock management start. Andy Reid.
Well, I really don't know what to say about that. I mean, I'm happy for Childress, I guess, but I think it's cool that he'll be, working with what seems to be a perennial playoff contender. But I just don't see. I mean, Alex Smith is like the definition of mediocrity. And,
yes, and a bunch of people were pumping him up after the Chiefs won a bunch of games. It's as if they believe in quarterback wins.
Yeah, right. But I will say that it's impressive that they were able to do as well as they did without Jamal Charles for most of the season. In the unlikely event
that is
stays
definitely
healthy,
impressive. Yeah.
Then there'll be a playoff contender again, where maybe they'll fritter away the last 6 minutes of the fourth quarter in the conference championship instead of the divisional round.
Hooray!
Yay! Teddy Bridgewater is rated the most accurate passer in the NFL regular season.
Yeah, according to Pro Football Focus, who, just to rehash, they get rid of throwaways and spikes and passes bad at the line of scrimmage, and then they add drops to a quarterback's, quote unquote, completion percentage, or they count drops as accurate passes. So accuracy rating will always be higher than a completion rating, because all completed passes are by definition accurate, and then you get rid of passes that have no chance of being accurate or cannot be judged as being accurate, and you add passes that have been dropped. So because Teddy Bridgewater has had the most throwaways in the history of Pro Football Focus's game charting, and because he's had sort of a league average number of drops, he moves from a relatively high-ish completion percentage of, I believe, around 65% to a 79% or something like that accuracy rating. A lot of comments to that tweet that Pro Football Focus tweeted out, as well as a lot of comments to both Reddit threads about Teddy and his uncommonly high accuracy rating. We took a look at actually this question partway through the season when we did Teddy by the numbers. And if you adjust, accuracy rating for, depth of target, and there's a bunch of ways to do it. The way that I ended up choosing is the way that most accurately predicts quarterback performance a couple of years into the future. You could do it, half and half. You could do it like accuracy 75%, depth of targets 25%. You could do it in a bunch of different splits. But when I look at it and adjust for depth of target and look at it from a way that best predicts quarterback performance in other seasons, it looks like Teddy actually ranks fifth and depth of target adjusted completion rating. And a lot of people that were commenting were, not necessarily Vikings fans, or, some were. And they were like, yeah, good job throwing all those screens. Good job throwing, 3-yard passes to the running back, which I don't know if they remember Adrian Peterson, but he's not throwing passes to Adrian Peterson. And it turns out Teddy actually, after you adjust for his depth of target, is actually still remarkably accurate. And, this measure doesn't over qualify for short passers, because like Ben Roethlisberger ranks second, Carson Palmer ranks right next to Teddy. They're almost tied, actually. Sixth, Teddy's fifth. Andy Dalton's up there. Russell Wilson is actually a pretty deep passer, despite the reputation of his offense, is up there. Teddy's actually one of the only short passers that is up there. The only other ones are Tom Brady and Drew Brees. So, good company.
Must be doing something right.
You'd think.
This is not necessarily a Vikings news item, but I thought it, noteworthy. There's a link in the show notes to a pretty cool panoramic view of the under construction U.S. Bank Stadium as viewed from midfield, like within the last couple of days, because you can see the scoreboards hung on both sides, and light shining in from the incomplete roof. It's pretty impressive.
It's really cool.
It would be better if they could do another one once the stadium was finished, because it would be cool to get that, on-field perspective that so few of us ever will. But for now, this is definitely something to whet the appetite, get us looking forward to next season when we get to play in our glass cage of bird murder.
Yeah. Screw those birds. It's really cool. You get to see like all the different tiers. You get to see like the 3 tiers of seating, and then the press box / suite area, which I guess you would not count as a tier. Just the sole reason they built an entirely new stadium is for the suites. But yeah, you get to see how big the video board is going to be, or both video boards, because they're going to be the same size on opposite ends of the field. It's pretty cool.
And our last news item, the Bills promote Kathryn Smith to quality control / special teams coach, making her the first full-time female coach in the NFL. The Arizona Cardinals, I forget her name, but they have a woman coach for their inside linebacker core.
They had a woman coach. She was for the preseason. I forget her name too. It was like Jen, I want to say like Childress or something like that. Anyway, and she's a former linebacker for a women's football league and or a co-ed league. Anyway, she has highlights on YouTube, which is kind of cool. Anyway, Kathryn Smith, obviously this is super cool, I think. She's been working with Rex Ryan for the past 7 years, and she's done, I guess, a number of things. In fact, you could actually say that she's been working in some capacity for a Rex Ryan organization, actually going all the way back to 2003, if you count stuff that's not football related, because she was on the special events staff. She'd been doing a lot of the logistical stuff. The people that don't just like figure out community service stuff. The logistical people that figure out flights and hotels and stuff like that. Figure out how to get like printers to and from their location. The people that are pretty critical to like the London move and stuff like that. Whenever a team goes to London, making sure players have passports and stuff like that. All the logistical stuff she did, and then she worked on the football side of operations for the last 7 years. She's been doing like scouting internship work. She's been doing work with Rex Ryan directly as an assistant to the head coach and stuff like that. And right now she's a special teams quality control coach. And I think that this kind of requires like a job description. Like a lot of people don't seem to understand what a quality control coach does.
Funny you mentioned that. I was driving to the airport this morning listening to Top 40 like morning zoo style radio. I don't know why.
Right.
But I was. And during one of the breaks, the morning zoo team on some Denver station is a male and a female. And the lady, of course, read the story, and she was like, this is great. And the guy was like, quality control special teams, what does that even mean? And he just sort of worked out a quick little thought experiment in his head. And what he decided special teams quality control coach means is that...
what?
is that Kathryn Smith is in charge of tying the kicker's shoelaces.
What is wrong with everybody?
What else could she possibly be doing? What quality control could there be? I mean, you never. How many people could possibly be on special teams? It's really only the kicker, right? There's no long snapper or punter or kick return team.
Wow, okay, that's pretty astounding. Yeah, so we're also going to link in the show notes a link to a Deadspin piece from a Cleveland radio show that expresses much more overt, awful sexism. If you're willing to listen, it actually was really difficult for me to listen after about 5 minutes, and I'm sure it was difficult for other people to listen to for less because it's like pretty repulsive stuff. But it's a lot of people that are just like, well, first they're just like, well, you can't tell male players what to do. You're not like physically imposing over them, which is like, I don't know if you've seen a football staff. Like, I don't know if you know how many of those dudes are physically imposing versus NFL players, some of the most physically imposing people on the planet, but it's not very many. It's like Mike Singletary, who does not coach like that, and that's kind of it.
See, here I was convinced that Bill Belichick got that like black eye/eye infection from fist fighting with Patrick Chung.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't put any coaching technique above Bill Belichick. So, maybe we'll put his voodoo wizard magic in another box. But yeah, it's like they fundamentally don't understand like the coach-player relationship, or they're just kind of used to the screwed-up relationship that high school coaches have with high school players. Often, where it's more bullying than it is teaching. But anyway, there's not a lot of people that seem to understand what a quality control coach does. Most coaches in the NFL at some point, especially most head coaches, but any coach at some point played a quality control role on an NFL team, if not were directly assigned the quality control job with the title quality control coach. So Bill Belichick is actually, I don't want to say one of the first quality control coaches in the NFL back in 1975 for the Baltimore Colts, but he was an early one, and most of the head coaches around the league have had quality control coach positions. Someone else pointed out that Kyle Shanahan was a quality control coach, I think, for Tampa Bay. Anyway, probably for Denver, if we're being honest. And the thing is, she's significantly more qualified than actually most of the quality control coaches that ever get hired. And it's kind of funny to see all these people, in response to the Buffalo Bills tweet or response to the NFL tweet or just response to the, hiring in general, question the credentials of a quality control coach when they don't even look at the quality control staff on their own teams. The Vikings have 2 quality control staff, and I already forgot one of their names. The other one is like Jonathan Gannon or something like that, and he's also an assistant defensive backs coach, so that doesn't really count. But the offensive quality control coach the Vikings have, his only qualification was that he was a backup D2 quarterback who was able to play one season because the starter was injured in Game 3 and put up some decent numbers. So those are his qualifications. Kyle Shanahan's qualifications were my dad is the coach of the Denver Broncos. Bill Belichick's qualifications were somehow even less impressive, which is my dad's the coach of Navy. And he became an NFL quality control coach, so it's like his first job. And a lot of these people don't even have high school playing experience. I believe Bill Belichick had some brief experience at center at Wesleyan University. And I believe Kyle Shanahan was like a high school quarterback, but a lot of these people don't even have that. So it's kind of nuts that there's such a laser focus on what this person's qualifications are when she's significantly more qualified as having been like a scouting intern and having been a personnel assistant, collating reports and stuff like that, which is like a lot of what the quality control coach does. And so what the quality control coach does, what Bill Belichick did, what Kyle Shanahan did, is they look at game film. It's either their own film or an upcoming opponent's film. And as the special teams coach, you'll be looking at like kickoff film and punt and return film and stuff like that, and cataloging all the different things that different teams do in different situations. And so there's actually a really good piece from Inside the Pylon that I'll link in the show notes that talks about like different kickoff coverages and stuff like that. And the stuff that this person is talking about, it's the same person who wrote that excellent Blair Walsh article. The stuff that this person is talking about is going to be her job. She's going to catalog all the different strategies that teams will use, different strategies and formations that teams will use on kickoff, kickoff return, punt return, and so on. When Adam Thielen ran it, for a fake against, it was the Packers, right, in Week 17. The quality control coach, 90% of the time, is the person who figured out that the Packers overload this side of the formation every so often, especially in this situation in punt blocks, and so she'll be the person that figures out the tendencies that are exploitable on special teams for the Jets, or not for the Jets, for the Bills. Yeah, and often, most of the assistant coaches, like the assistant to the linebackers coach, or whatever, assistant linebacker coach, will perform a quality control function, and some teams don't have a quality control coach because they have their assistant position coaches do quality control stuff. But yeah, it's usually someone who's doing quality control work that finds a tendency, puts it in a report, and then the head coaches and offensive coordinators will also often do quality control work themselves to double check. But it'll be the coaches who decide to act on that information and read the reports that are produced by the quality control coach. Also, the special teams quality control coach and most quality control coaches will run the scout teams. And so we'll also be doing direct coaching, technique, and also like imitation coaching, because you have to do a scout team. You have to imitate some of the tendencies that players have. So there'll be like some technique coaching. There'll be some coordination sort of coaching and stuff like that. So that's the role that she has. And that's like the most ridiculous, set of. I just haven't seen anyone ever question the credentials of a quality control coach.
Well, yeah, because you're basically watching film by proxy for the other coaches, and kind of submitting reports and like shorter cuts of film, right? Like that's.
Yeah, exactly. And so so players will have like cut-ups on their tablets, and so they can see all the third down snaps that their opponent has taken or whatever, or third and long snaps in the middle of the field. And the person who organizes all that's the quality control coach. So yeah.
For someone who loves football, for someone who has spent, a 10 years plus in administrative and organizational roles in the NFL, that seems like the perfect position for somebody who wants to take the step into, the actual football side of the game as opposed to the administrative and logistics. I mean...
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's how a lot of, like, the logistical... So the people who do football operations, those are the logistical people. And so that's how they get started on the football side of things, is that they do quality control stuff. It's perfect. You're right.
So really all of this stuff about, her qualifications is a smokescreen to say rude things about women, just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's like happening, and it's also like this weird like assumption of players. So like one of the things that this Cleveland radio host does, and I didn't finish listening to the radio call, so maybe he walks it back, but I doubt it, given sort of all of the hullabaloo about it, all of like the backlash that he's caused. But like one of the things that he's saying is that he's not the one who's sexist when he says all of these things about how she should be denied a job opportunity because of her gender. He's not the sexist one. He's watching out for her because he knows other people will be sexist. And so she shouldn't have the job because she's being set up to fail, because I know all of these other people are going to be sexist.
Isn't that like the definition of concern trolling?
It is. Yeah, that's exactly what concern trolling is. And so, he's like, she's going to coach like these 10 players and 8 of them are going to walk away grumbling. And it's like, well, hold on. They're special teamers, right? They're special teamers. You can cut them. If they don't listen to the coach, you can cut them. No one cares. There's special teamers that are like hanging on to a job. And so I really doubt, A, that they'll do that, or B, that you would enforce discipline any differently than you would for someone else who's like talking back at a coach. And like, hey, sometimes you do talk back to coaches. That's kind of what you do. You're a football player. And if you think you can do something smarter, you'll speak up. I mean, that's one of the things that Kevin Williams actually liked about Leslie Frazier as a coordinator, not as a head coach. I guess things changed when he was a head coach. But like, you can bring up stuff, and that's not like a challenge to authority. But like, this dude is so determined to believe that players will resent her authority, and B, concerned that that'll cut her performance down. That he can use this as a shield, right? I'm not being this isn't discrimination. I'm totally all for having a woman president. I just think that in football, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and here's There's a story in the comments told by a commenter on the Deadspin article, and this story is blown up on Bleacher Report too. I imagine the comments there are gold as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But this guy, the sports anchor Kevin Kiley, apparently lost his mind when this lady Mary Kay Cabot, who had been covering Cleveland sports for years, was elevated to the lead position covering the Browns for
which gave her a Hall of Fame vote, right?
Exactly. And so the tentpole of his not sexist argument was, how will a woman ever be knowledgeable enough to vote for anyone in the Hall of Fame? Think of all those poor men who won't get into the Hall of Fame because the lady reporter voted for Gronk every year because he has the nicest eyes and the best tush.
Yeah, right. They're so grabbed by their emotions and I guess horniness, which is not when we stereotype women.
Her desire, it will leak out all over her Hall of Fame ballot.
Which is crazy because when we do gender stereotypes, it's almost always the opposite. We enforce dress codes at schools because boys can't control themselves. But suddenly, when it comes to Hall of Fame voting, the women will be moved by their vaginas or whatever.
Well, dude, that's exactly what he's doing here. On one hand, Kiley wants us to believe that, the players will be unmanageable because the players will not, adequately respect a woman. And on the other, he wants us to believe that it's the women who are out of control when it's their turn to vote for someone to enter the Hall of Fame. I mean, Mike Wilbon never played football. What makes him qualified to, vote somebody into the Hall of Fame?
Right, and that's what this guy keeps on trying to bring. So there's a co-host on the show, and he credit to him is pretty incensed the whole time. For the most part, I actually kind of expected him maybe to disagree, but not to because it looked like he was disagreeing to the point where it was going to hurt their professional relationship, and a lot of times that doesn't happen, especially for a radio show. So credit to him, but he was don't you are you serious? Half of the sports writers who vote for the Hall of Fame, probably more, but I'll give you half, right, have never played football. And he also talked about baseball and basketball, and the guy was well, women in baseball and basketball, that's fine, but physical is a sport of physical dominance, unlike other athletic endeavors, right? Yeah,
right. I imagine what's his name? Larry Bird probably has something to say about that.
Well, right. I'm sure the entire 1990s Detroit Pistons have something to say about that. But yeah, okay. So the reason is the reasoning is that they've never played the game, and then this guy points out well, neither have a lot of Hall of Fame voters, and probably most of them, if we're being honest. And and this guy is and this guy's well, they couldn't fundamentally understand, what it means to be an athlete. I don't even know. He doesn't even articulate his point in response to this guy. So it's just ridiculous. And it's come on, man. I mean, there's so much really good reporting when it comes to women reporters. Mary Kay Cabot's actually not a good example of it. She's a terrible reporter. But Jenna Lane for the Bucks. Lindsey Jones for USA Today. I actually highlighted a bunch of them because they all have the name Lindsey. So there's Lindsey Young, Lindsey Jones, someone who goes by the Twitter handle La La Lindsay, but she's the writer for BuzzFeed Sports. But all of them are actually pretty good. Obviously, I've worked with Lindsey Young, so but she's very good. And there's obviously a lot who do a very good job covering the sport and the team that they're assigned to cover. And so it's really weird when there's so much bad sports writing by the sports writers that we're used to seeing, right? Usually old dudes, usually white dudes, but less nowadays.
Who is going to take away Mitch Albom's Hall of Fame vote?
Yeah, exactly.
That man writes the laziest, most turgid prose. Every time he puts pen to paper, it shaves a week off my life. And yet, in sports writing circles, he is revered as some sort of sports writing institution.
Mitch Albom is one of the worst sports. He's worse than who's the guy that we were talking about earlier? Whitlock. He's worse than Whitlock actually, which is pretty hard to do. Oh my god! And he's a Hall of Fame vote. Mitch Albom has a Hall of Fame vote. He's the Detroit area representative Hall of Fame vote.
Peter King has a Hall of Fame vote. If Peter King could vote for Roger Goodell to enter the Hall of Fame, he would.
Peter King is on record saying that if Darren Sharper were slightly better as a player, he would vote for him for the Hall of Fame. So, because he was like, I wouldn't vote for Darren Sharper for the Hall of Fame, but that's only because he's very good, not because he's a rapist.
You can't see my face, but I'm rolling my eyes like really hard.
Yeah, right. It's like, way to take a stand, Peter.
It's a very principled stand.
Right. So, but yeah, also Peter King is not very good at like determining the quality of players or people.
Or coffee or beer.
Or coffee or beer. Wait, isn't his favorite coffee the Starbucks flat white? Well, we don't need to get into this.
It was some other garbage from Starbucks before. It'll probably be some other garbage from Starbucks the next thing. That's just who Peter King is, you know?
Yeah, and so in baseball and football, especially, people will retain their Hall of Fame votes long after they cover the team. Luckily, I think in Minnesota, it's... Actually, I don't know if it's Sid Hartman. I know that in baseball, it's not Mark Craig. I'm forgetting. But it's not Sid Hartman, which is what I'm trying to get. So luckily, it's someone who covers sports in reality. But yeah.
Well, and realistically, like if you listen to the ads on Kevin Kiley's radio show, you kind of get a sense of his demographic and why he and, a lot of the other people of his kind of generation of his style can, I guess he's not really getting away with saying it, but the reason they say this stuff, I think, is because...
I totally forgot Rachel Nichols, probably the best female reporter on the planet. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, how dare you. But the reason they, say this stuff and it gets traction, you listen to the ads and it's all, debt consolidation, mortgage refinancing, low testosterone, like clinics and supplements, like it seems as though it's designed to appeal. Like there'll be ads for the Bosley Hair Clinic, like
it's designed to appeal to the same people who get the Blaze email newsletter.
Exactly. A very specific demographic of people who are convinced that their status at the top of the social heap is in constant danger from talented female coaches and reporters.
I wouldn't be surprised if we just lost a couple of listeners. I'm okay with that. That's fine.
Final point. Kevin Kiley's son, Kevin Jr., is a professional wrestler for the WWE, performing under the ring name Alex Riley.
Oh, poor guy.
That is neither here nor there, but I thought it noteworthy.
Or, maybe he agrees, in which case, not poor guy. I don't know. Don't let the sins of the father stain the son.
Well, at least he found a different sport that is more accommodating to women in performing and coaching roles.
Shockingly.
I know,
significantly more, too.
So maybe the apple does fall far enough from the overtly sexist tree.
Right. All right, so moving on from our... the closest thing we'll get to politics in a couple of weeks, anyway.
That was Arif's rant of the, I guess, fortnight? Month?
Yeah, yes, okay, so one final friggin' thing. How likely is it that the first female hire is going to be someone who is unqualified? Like, just think about how ridiculous that would be. Like... Yeah, there's obviously a bunch of male hires who are unqualified, and it turns out many of them make it. But how likely is it that the first permanent female hire is going to be okay? Whenever stuff like this happens, they have to be overqualified. Like Jackie Robinson would be in the Hall of Fame if he wasn't black. He was an amazing player, right? And obviously that's the first person that we go to for this kind of thing because he's the most easily recallable athletic event, but every time something like this happens, it's someone way overqualified for the position they finally get when they break that barrier.
She's been working for Rex Ryan for 12 years. She was with she worked for the Jets, and then she was Ryan's assistant. She's been associated with NFL teams, 2 NFL teams, mostly working under Rex Ryan for 12 years. If he does not I feel like if you're actually taking, genuine shots at her qualifications and not just employing the no true Scotsman fallacy to claim that right. No woman would be qualified, and since she is a woman, she is therefore not qualified. You're basically saying that Rex Ryan doesn't know how to hire personnel.
Yeah, which of all of Rex Ryan's many, many faults,
that's not
including hiring Rob Ryan, maybe. That's definitely not one of them, though. He has had some extraordinary personnel work with him and under him. which is why I'm like so curious about the Ed Reed thing. But that's neither here nor there. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it's so freaking unlikely that they. I can't get that out of my head. Like, are you serious that this is like? Anyway, this is how you get your foot in the door coaching. So just like let it happen. Let her fail like on her own merits if she fails, and then you can all have your shitty, stupid, sexist laughs.
And who knows? Maybe she'll be great. Chances are, if unless she gets promoted to special teams coach or something, we will not hear from her again. It strikes me
It's
that
kind of true. Chances are, yeah.
her position is not one of great glamour, but hey, more power to her, and hopefully she pushes the door open for other women who want to get in on the football side and spend some of the best years of their lives in a film room.
All right.
Conference playoffs
And
happening
I
on
haven't thought about
Sunday.
these games in days. It's so weird not following football that closely. Well, active football.
Well, because I mean, there's two games with two possible outcomes, and the Denver game, I think everyone is predicting that New England is going to win. When last I looked, they were a 3-point favorite in Denver, which is weird because
That seems like easy money to me.
really, you think New England's going to win by a lot more?
Yeah, I think that this should be a touchdown favorite. And this is coming from someone who, and mind you, the Denver defense is like obviously extremely good. They're the first team since 2011 not to allow 400 yards in a single game, which is not a great defensive metric, but is interesting. And yeah, they're like astounding, right? Like there's no question that they're a very good defense, and they're probably a top three, if not top two defense in the NFL right now. It kind of depends on what you think of the Seahawks. I think holistically, Denver's a better defense if you take the whole season into account, but like the Seahawks are better than second. Anyway, great defense. I understand that. Tom Brady is working with a pseudo depleted cast. He has Edelman back, and I believe he has Gronk back. Still, like,
Edelman, Gronk, Amendola, and Dante Hightower and Jamie Collins are all expected to be back.
Jamie Collins is back. Excellent. Hopefully he doesn't play like shit like he did 2 weeks ago. Anyway, Jamie Collins is an amazing linebacker, but he had some troubles. But yeah, it just feels like it should not be this close. And maybe I'm thinking about it because like on a neutral field, they'd be a 6 point, and maybe I'm just thinking about it that way. But this is coming from a dude who desperately wants Peyton Manning to like win it all. And it would be so funny, and not just because I'm a huge Peyton Manning fan, which, spoiler alert, I totally am, but it would be so funny if his second Super Bowl happened when he was at the worst point in his career as a
He could
player.
barely play.
Yeah, right. Like definitely, like rookie Peyton Manning was better than him, right? Like that would be so funny if that was his second ring. So yeah,
Well, frankly, I hope they win it all. Well, on the one hand, I hope they win it all because that is literally the only way that Peyton Manning will ever leave us alone.
leave us alone.
Yeah,
Well,
because
you know
if
what's
they don't
sick of
win
him
it all
now
this year,
because
he's going to try and come back next year.
there's no
I,
way.
yes, I guarantee you he will. He
Well,
is
hopefully he wins it so he can be like some terrible quarterbacks coach somewhere.
the only way he has the strength to float those wobbly passes over the middle is because he burns with like an unsatisfied pride.
Well, I'll believe that. I'll believe that. But like, I feel like in order for you to come back, someone has to take you back. And after 2010, who took Brett Favre back?
I just feel like the relationship between Elway and Manning is such that if he wants to stay, he'll be able to stay, which is very,
So,
very, very frustrating.
as a Denver fan,
As a Broncos fan, I feel like it's a little bit analogous to the situation with Adrian Peterson in Minnesota. There are a lot of people who feel, rightly or wrongly, and we'll address this a little bit more later, that Peterson's continued participation in the team is holding other elements of the team back. And I really feel like Peyton Manning is kind of keeping the Broncos in the past. It's time to give Brock the reps he deserves, and if he's not the guy, then it's time to move on. But trying to insist that a team anchored by Aqib Talib and then Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson is somehow like a playoff or Super Bowl contender is just, I mean, no, come on, man. I mean, Peyton he may be the best at running the 2-minute offense, ever in history.
Did a pretty good job of that when he came back.
The best one. Well, yeah, exactly. But that is the only thing he can do, regrettably. And what sucks is that the weather report now for Denver has changed a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
There is a strong possibility of, I mean, in as much as any weather report for Denver can be accurate, there is a forecast for wintry mix, like before and during the game. So,
this can be a good thing because the Patriots don't have a running game now. And Denver, though they also kind of don't have a running game, have a better one, especially relative to the strength of the opposing run defense. So, hey, a wintry mix is just good news for the Denver Broncos.
I mean, I guess for the run, but they're going to have to throw the ball eventually, and Peyton Manning can barely throw, and sometimes it seems like his receivers can barely catch. Like, if they drop 7 passes against New England, it's over.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, like last week, or like 3 weeks ago, or like 4 weeks ago. Just brutal drops to wide open receivers.
Fowler have a... Anyway.
That's a good question. And they've been trying to work it out in practice, but man, if it's going to be cold and slippery out there, that's got to be a penalty on the Broncos more than on...
Oh, for sure. It's definitely a penalty for whichever team does not have Rob Gronkowski. Yes.
And Julian Edelman. Although, I will say that New England, I mean, part of the secret to Tom Brady's dominance is that most of their pass plays are time plays. He gets rid of the ball super quickly, goes through his reads super quickly, and he just expects people to be where they're supposed to be. And Edelman is really good at breaking away. Gronk is really good at breaking away. Other players have accused Gronk of pushing off nearly every time, which is probably true.
Not nearly as true as the accusations paint it to be.
Well, okay. So maybe it's like 60 to 70% of the time instead of 99, like players report.
But it's only good because he's physically dominant.
Oh, yes, which is fine. But Denver's defense, their run defense, and particularly their cornerbacks are stout enough to rush up and jam up receivers right away. And that is like the Achilles heel for the New England offensive strategy. So if our defense can, get in Edelman, Amendola, and Gronkowski's faces all simultaneously and throw them off their routes just for, that half a second to a second, and, if our linebackers can, put some pressure on Brady, then I think there is an opportunity for Denver to win.
Yeah, no, if a lot of things go the right way, you're right.
A lot of things are going to have to go the right way. And what's most upsetting is that I have to pretty much assume that the Patriots are going to score at least 7 points off turnovers. And that alone makes me think that 3 points is a pretty generous line. I mean, that's if it was offense versus offense, sure, but I suspect that New England defense will do better than Denver defense at converting turnovers into points. Brandon Marshall disagrees.
Which Brandon Marshall?
The wide receiver.
Oh, that's slightly more relevant because a player playing in the game would naturally disagree.
From an article on Mile High Report, the SB Nation blog for the Denver Broncos. There'll be a link in the show notes, of course. But on Inside the NFL, former Denver Broncos and current New York Jets wide receiver Brandon Marshall predicts the Broncos to not only beat the Patriots in the AFC Championship game, but also to top the Arizona Cardinals 27-24 in the Super Bowl.
Oh.
And you can watch him saying that very wildly irresponsible prognostication on Inside the NFL, because there's a link in the article.
All right. Put that in the show notes, I guess.
I think Brandon Marshall just hates the Patriots, which is fair.
It's totally fair. Well, so Brandon Marshall has like two allegiances that are, right? Because he's a former Bronco and he's a current Jet.
Yep, and he's a Jet.
All the reason in the world. Yeah, all the reason in the world. Oh, and a former Dolphin. All the reason in the world to hate the Patriots.
Brad Tucker at Glue on My Strings writes in with a question. What's up with people obsessively trying to prove Manning is better than Brady? Can't we just appreciate both? No.
It's sports, man. Like, the whole point of sports is to prove that someone is better than someone, and usually that's done on the field but it becomes difficult when you're evaluating individual players in a team sport. So now we have to do it using the tools that we have. Also, like, I mean, people are equally as obsessive proving that Tom Brady is better than Peyton Manning. So, like, it's kind of a tilted question, isn't it?
I don't know if they're necessarily obsessed with proving that Brady is better than
Or
Manning, but
they're
they're
obsessed with
definitely
asserting
obsessed
it,
with
right?
saying it.
Right.
Yes. Like,
Exactly.
Peyton
Well, okay,
Manning
so
doesn't. Go
yeah,
ahead.
so the problem, of course, is that like the Peyton Manning argument, the one I believe, is one that requires maybe a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't say evidence or work, but intellectual rigor to go through. I think you need evidence, right, to say it, because if you want to say that Tom Brady's better, you can just be like, well, look at all the rings,
Just go look
right?
at all the rings, do. Yeah.
Right. And we already had this like conversation about how stupid quarterback wins is. There's a really good piece that maybe sparked this question actually, written by Scott Kacsmar at ESPN Insider. Kacsmar? I don't know. Written at ESPN Insider that talks about sort of the playoff records of the two quarterbacks and how 6 plays that that they were not involved in, 6 plays from the supporting cast of those two teams have written the playoff narrative for both of them without them being involved in those plays, and the plays are all improbable. And the 3 plays for Manning would, in most situations, have swung in Manning's favor, and the 3 plays for Brady, in most situations, would have swung not in Brady's favor. And you could think about like that 47-yard kick in a blizzard against Oakland and stuff like that. It's a really good piece, and it talks about how when you take a look at some of the statistics that talk about playoff performance, Manning does come out ahead. Again, this is an argument I believe, and this is an argument that will continue on into perpetuity because it's sports, man. Like everybody ranks things. It's not even like an American thing. I mean, people talk about Cristiano Ronaldo versus Lionel Messi every day in stupid internet forums, when the answer is like clearly Lionel Messi. Um,
It's true.
and
Even Cristiano Ronaldo's kid is a Messi fan.
Yeah, but this happens a lot. Like Zinedine Zidane was like a fat Ronaldo fan right before the 1998 World Cup. But yeah, Cristiano Ronaldo's kid, of which I'm sure he only has one. Uh,
One, one that he raises. No,
right,
that's
right.
rude. I have no whatever. So I feel like people end up sticking up for Manning because Brady has just this like built-in cheering squad of obnoxious Boston fans led by Bill Simmons, who continues
Oh.
to want to have it both ways, that the Patriots are the most, downtrodden, the league is always up their butts, the referees are always screwing them, and yet they're still somehow the greatest team to ever play football.
Well, it's like an interesting thing because like Kraft has a really close relationship with Goodell and is one of the most important figures in the NFL right now, and has the most is one of the largest influences in the NFL. And despite that, the Patriots keep on getting punished for cheating. And I really don't think I understand where this like everybody's against this conspiracy comes from. But like, if the NFL were really against you, you would not be in the position that you're in at
You
all.
probably would not have an owner who was like best friends with the commissioner. I mean, you probably like in some way a lot of I suspect, given the way that Goodell tends to run discipline throughout the league, that the ongoing specter of cheating that hangs over the Patriots is one because they're dirty cheaters, and two because Goodell somehow somewhere in his black little soul feels badly about helping the Patriots cover up Spygate.
Oh, Bill Belichick. Well, no, he didn't help them cover up Spygate. He helped them cover up a related controversy in the same year as Spygate, in theory, about taping practices, which is a different thing. Because Spygate was about taping sideline calls from a different
Oh,
spot in the
that was
stadium.
taping. Games. Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Well,
so
at
right,
any
because
rate, the
you're allowed
NFL
to
destroyed
tape.
videotape.
Right, exactly. Because you're allowed to tape the opposing coordinator's sideline calls, but in
But
2007
like
they
from
like
the sideline,
changed it.
right? So
Yeah,
they can stand
exactly.
away from the camera or stand behind people and like
Yeah,
cover their faces with their little plastic cards or whatever.
exactly. So it's I think that's less cheating than the filming practices. I think that's maybe significantly more cheating. But
Well,
maybe
that's
that never
probably why
happened.
the
We have
league
no
chose that one
evidence.
to cover up.
Right. So
At any rate, I feel like the wanting to cheer on Manning or defend him or make reasonable arguments as to why he might be a better quarterback kind of stems as a natural reaction to this, overwhelming, I guess, insufferability from Boston sports fans.
Man, Boston sports fans are so spoiled. I think the Celtics are bad now. I'm
They're
glad.
they're just like Tom Brady. They are a little bit weird. They're spoiled, and when everything doesn't go their way, they complain like crazy. But then when they do win, they're just like all smiles.
I think I remember was it 2009 someone had pointed out that the Patriots were of the four major Boston sports teams, the Patriots had gone the longest without a championship, like a 2009 or something like that. Because the Red Sox finally won one, right? And then the Bruins had won one, and then the Celtics had won one recently. I think with Kevin Garnett, because anything's possible. And the Patriots hadn't won since 2005 because the 2007 championship game was rigged because what was it? I think it was Mike Carey actually should have called Eli Manning down when he was held during the sack on the David Tyree catch. Yeah, it's all a conspiracy, man.
Ugh. Whatever. The much more interesting game, I think, or at least the more exciting game, will be Arizona at Carolina.
Oh, that's going to
This
be so fun.
this seems to me like the Super Bowl will be fine and everything. I mean,
The Super Bowl will be. Well, you're right. Actually, typically they're pretty boring games. So
I don't want to watch New England win a Super Bowl. I don't want to watch Denver lose a Super Bowl. And those are the two most likely outcomes from either AFC team that makes it. What I really want is to watch the two best teams in the league play each other, and that's happening this week with Arizona and Carolina.
it's true. It's true. The two best teams in the league. Well, the teams that have performed the best in the league. I think that a completely healthy Patriots team is probably the best team in the league.
Yeah, I know. God,
I'm sorry.
that's why they're going to win the stupid Super Bowl.
But the two teams that have performed the best so far, according to me, are Arizona and Carolina, and according to you two. And the reason they perform the best is because that they are among the best qualitatively. So yeah, no, it's be fun. I put money in Arizona. I'm cheering for Carolina. That's how these things go.
That's right. I believe the line is also Arizona by 3. Is
Is it?
that
I
what
thought
you
it
got?
was. That was Carolina. Well, I haven't looked at it in like 4 days, but I thought it was like Carolina by 3.
Oh,
Has it swung? Well, I'm gonna look it up right now.
yeah. Let's put it into this.
Go to Vegas Insider or whatever it is. Has it?
A little line aggregator.
Yeah.
Nope,
Okay.
still Carolina by 3. I
Yeah,
had
Carolina by 3. Yeah. See, you're wrong.
my team's mixed
It's
up.
so
I'm so
easy to-
wrong.
It's so easy to put money in Arizona because I was like, oh, they're not even favored. Which I mean, Carolina's at home, right? So makes sense.
So Arizona is one of the few teams in the league that doesn't really use a whole lot of zone coverage.
Yeah, it's because Bruce Arians gives no fucks.
So how can Carolina use that to their advantage?
Well, they've got a running quarterback, right? Which is become a pejorative and now is no longer a pejorative. But one of the problems with man coverage is that you've got your back turned on the quarterback, and so for running lane opens up, and it's Cam Newton. You're going to do a pretty decent job, especially if you're Arizona and you send a bunch of people on blitzes, and you don't have anyone spying. Which I don't know. Carolina seems to be, or Arizona seems to be well coached, so they may have a spy. If that spy is Deion Buchanan, they're probably in a bad spot because Cam Newton now weighs him by 40 pounds. But yeah, no, I mean that's a significant problem, I think, because hey, if you've got your back turned to the quarterback and he scrambles, that's going to cause a lot of problems. Other than that, obviously you could do bunch routes or rub routes, stuff like that, which is something people did against Seattle a lot when they weren't in their man package. I don't think that they've got specific matchup qualities. I think Ted Ginn matches up particularly poorly against Patrick Peterson because Patrick Peterson is also very fast, which I believe is Ted Ginn's only quality. But you're probably gonna have to win at the line with like Devin Funchess against somebody, the other corner who is not injured like Tyrann Mathieu is. And yeah, I mean you're probably gonna run like crossers and bunch formation stuff. If I'm coaching. I haven't. We've got an article in the show notes. I haven't read it. Dusty, I presume, has read it and is going to talk about it.
Well, I would, but you said basically what the article does, and the article has the advantage of films in GIF form that illustrate those concepts.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm glad we agree. Who wrote it? James Dator or who?
That I'd have to look. I never look at bylines.
No, that makes sense.
Canadian Panther
I
at
have never heard of this person. I
at
assume
CP
it's a fan
underscore
post.
CSR.
No, maybe not. Anyway, oh look at that! It's a nice long piece with oh wow, a lot of detail. I like this. We're definitely
Yeah, this is a really good piece. Everyone should check it out. It'll be in the show notes. It will probably be a blueprint for how they try to divide up Arizona's defense.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got crossers, rubs, and picks. They've got some pretty good concepts, man beater concepts that Matt Bowen has talked about in the past. This Yankee concept is pretty good because it relies on exploiting the only zone that exists, which is the single high safety zone. So over under sort of levels concept. Yeah, there's some good stuff in here. Great, we'll link it.
So, can Carolina win without Jared Allen? Because he's probably not going to play. He's like stuck in limbo between doubtful and questionable, but his foot is effed up.
I heard that he was going to be out for like the season, and then like as like injury reports rolled in, they were like, "There's a chance he could play," which like, that would be pretty Jared Allen of him to like. I guess the generous interpretation is to fight through the pain. The less generous interpretation would be to get way stocked up on Toradol and play. Either way, shows a lot of grit. Love him. But I mean, it's a broken foot. How is he even in the conversation for playing? So I just looked up Roto World because I thought he wasn't going to play, and then I saw a report I think earlier on Twitter that I couldn't quite interpret. But here's what Roto World says: Panthers right end Jared Allen, broken foot, looked pretty good in Thursday's limited practice, but Coach Ron Rivera remains unsure of his status. And then their blurb, Allen at least now has a chance to suit up against the Cardinals, but he still has progress to make. Even if Allen does suit up, his snaps will likely have to be rationed, not something he's used to, only 1 week after breaking his foot. They can win without him because he's not like a key to. I mean, they didn't even have him for like half the year. So he's like clearly not like a key to the way the defense operates, but I mean he's there for a reason and he's made the defense better. So Arizona's line is maybe the last offensive line left that's like legitimately not less than average. And you could say, the Patriots offensive line, and you've got a pretty good argument. They'll be playing a lot better than I think the reputation would suggest this year, especially because I think Shaq Mason's going to play the entire game against Denver. Anyway, back to the Carolina-Arizona game. The Arizona Cardinals do have a weakness along their offensive line, and I think that given how strong the defensive line for the Panthers is and how important it is to the way that they do, the way that they arrange their defense, like how they enable Josh Norman and Kurt Coleman of all people, is pretty significant. So like having Jared Allen out sucks, but they've got players that can rush the passer, and they've still got both like really good defensive tackles and all that. Who's right by? It's not Coney Ealy, is it? Who's behind Jared Allen?
It is Coney Ealy.
Oh, okay. Coney Ealy
is like probably going to get the start.
All right.
So
Coney 2016. And I'm sorry. Had to.
Judge Mills Lane will allow it. So how is Arizona going to perform against possibly the best defensive line in the league? I mean, you talked briefly about how they have, well, how did you put it? You were really like not very generous with your praise. What did you say? The only offensive line
that's not good. That's left.
Might not be considered to be good.
Yeah, well, I'm a little wordy, and I sometimes walk my words around at the actual point. Yeah. No,
so their offensive line is not good, and Carolina's defensive
Carson Palmer's
line is very
doing a lot to make them look good. Yeah, so the thing that they'll be doing in the game is probably not the thing that you want to do when you have a bad offensive line, but Palmer's so good and the receivers are so good that it kind of just overcomes that problem, which is just keep throwing long bombs and stuff like that. But I think that, the way that you get over or beat a good defensive line against your bad offensive line, a lot of short passing, a lot of screens to widen the defensive ends and tire them out, and a lot of exploiting linebackers in coverage, which I don't know, Luke Kuechly's pretty good in coverage, so that'll be kind of tough. But I think, what they're going to do is what they've always been doing. I think that they're just going to, like let stuff happen and let Carson Palmer just sort it out. Is what they've been doing. And David Johnson, he's going to do stuff.
Are you concerned at all about reports that Carson Palmer seemed spooked in last week's game? That he was perhaps a little too conservative with the play calling?
Nah, I'm not concerned about that.
There's an article on Cat Scratch Reader, which, all right, the Carolina Panthers SB Nation.
The SB Nation site. It's
it's a great site. It just has a weird name.
Because of cat scratch fever.
Toxoplasmosis is no joke.
You should write an angry letter to SB Nation.
I'm not going to do that. But they in their kind of roundup article about the Panthers-Cardinals game, which they call Collision Course, it ends, the stakes are at an all-time high with a guaranteed dance with one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history and a shot at the most illustrious prize in football. May the best team win.
A little corny.
I'm okay with corny.
It's true, also.
It is true. But no, this will be probably the most fun game to watch this season.
Yeah.
It'll at least be the two most exciting teams that have functionally diced up all of their opposition.
Yeah. Man, they made some work of the Seahawks, didn't they? Both of them.
I know. I know. All right, on to the mailbag. A question by email, which I'm sure you get a lot more of this on Twitter. And it turns out you're actually going to be writing an article for the Daily Norseman on this very topic. But Bill's letter is somewhat long, so let's go right to it. Hi guys, I'm a dedicated Norse Code podcast listener. I think you guys do a fantastic job breaking down the Vikings. I personally think that the Vikings should trade Peterson if they can get an early second-round pick or higher in return. They can use that draft pick, their other draft picks, the cap space they'll save on the Peterson trade, and the cap space they'll presumably free up by dumping Mike Wallace to shore up their offensive line, grab another running back to complement McKinnon, and pick up a wide receiver capable of catching contested balls, possibly Alshon Jeffrey. Is this like the chopped kitchen? Can you just run in and in 60 seconds grab all this stuff?
Oh yeah, no, for sure, certainly.
That would give the Vikings all the tools they need to build the offense around Teddy's demonstrated skill set. Here's the reason I don't think this will happen. Money. By money, I'm obviously not talking about cap space or ticket sales. I'm talking about TV revenue. Despite his tarnished off-the-field image, AP is the sole superstar on the Vikings roster at this point. The Wilfs are savvy business owners. They know they'll generate more national exposure and thus more TV revenue with Peterson than without him. Therefore, at least for 2016, I expect that the Vikings will stick with Peterson despite the fact that he holds the offense back in many ways.
Yeah, so I told him that I was going to touch on it in an article, and actually I did touch it on in my most recent article, so it's already been published. The off-season plan, which I imagine a lot of these questions are about. And so I think that they should trade Adrian Peterson. Obviously, it depends on sort of the get back, if you will. One of the biggest problems actually is that his 2017 cap is $16 million. It's nuts. And so, any way to get around that would also be nice. It's not like it's impossible. The Vikings paid Jared Allen $17 million cap in the final year of his contract with the Vikings. But I think that depending on the return, and I think that you could probably get a good enough return to make this trade viable, I think that you should trade Adrian Peterson. This has very little to do with my thoughts on his fit in the offense and everything to do with what I perceive to be either sacrificable production or replaceable production. Not all of his production can be replaced, but I think that his performance this year is overstated. In the article, I said that his season is superficially impressive as the league's leading rusher, but he was also the league's leading attempt getter. And one of the biggest problems with Peterson is that he was a very unsuccessful runner. Some of that has to do with the offensive line, but a lot of it has to do with him and his patience at the line, and especially in the first half of the year when he had a lot of troubles. But we saw that in the Seahawks game. We saw it in the games 2 weeks before that playoff game. And I think that on an individual run, he is just much more likely to either hurt you or have no impact as much as he is to help you. I mean, obviously, he had some really great runs, but all the big runs had usually been after the game had already been decided. So from a win probability perspective, he didn't add much. From an expected points perspective, he didn't add much. And I think that Jerick McKinnon is such a good running back that a lot of the stuff that you lose from Peterson will be buffered by the fact that you have Jerick McKinnon. And I'm not saying Jerick McKinnon is as good as like 2012 Peterson or anything like that, but he's just an extremely good running back that can replace maybe not all of, but a lot of what Peterson brought to the table. And I think that you could bring in another running back for short yardage situations if you're really concerned about McKinnon. I think that he's not small. I think that he is, for, I guess, maybe a shorter guy, super dense and super powerful and super strong. So I think that he can actually be good in short yardage situations. But you can bring in another guy, say Jonathan Williams from Arkansas, the guy I brought in the in the article that I wrote, to complement him as a short yardage guy. And I think Jonathan Williams, he's going to go late because of his injury and because he's perceived to be not that fast. And it's true he's not as fast as his teammate Alex Collins and not as fast as Jerick McKinnon. But I think that he's fast enough, and I think that he's good enough by himself to be a lead back in the same way that Chris Ivory was this year. And in the same way that Eddie Lacy was, maybe not this year, but 2 years ago, right? In the same way that people, project Derrick Henry to be. You don't have to be fast to be a good lead back, and I think that that's who Jonathan Williams can be, and they can complement each other pretty well. I think that $11 million hit from Peterson can be used to get someone like Alshon Jeffrey, but I don't think Jeffrey is going to be available. I think they'll franchise him. I got Alshon Jeffrey in the piece where I did an offseason plan, but like I said, I don't expect him to be available. So even without the Alshon Jeffrey thing, I think that the freed up cap space gives you a lot of flexibility to bring in better backups. Because there's a lot of chance for you to build cornerback depth. I think there's going to be big problems with safety and cornerback depth this offseason. There's a lot of chances for you to build on that. If you don't get rid of Peterson, you're going to have to be signing a lot of minimum contracts with a lot of minimum contract guys. I think that you can get, guys that aren't expecting to start but are pretty good cornerback depth, pretty good safety depth, and can compete for a starting job. And you might be able to get, the second or third or fourth best wide receiver to hit the market. So, maybe it's not Alshon Jeffrey, maybe it is, but you'll have a lot of opportunities, and I think you get rid of Mike Wallace. There's a lot of opportunities to create space. As to the question about whether or not Adrian Peterson will be kept for business concerns, I think that's kind of like a valid take, and I mentioned this in the piece. I don't think that would be the reason that they keep him. I think the Vikings coaching staff just ardently believes in Adrian Peterson, in how good he is, and I think that the front office does not really intervene all that much on football decisions for business reasons. And in fact, they stayed far away from the Adrian Peterson controversy the first time to their own detriment. So, yeah, I think that that's not a reason, but I think that they'll keep him because they believe in his talent. And I think that Adrian Peterson is not 2012 Peterson, and we're not going to see that season again. And so we need to evaluate who he is. He was like the league's leading rusher in a year where the leading rusher had like the lowest number of rushing yards in a long time. And on individual rushes, he kind of hurt the team a lot, actually. And that's discounting the fumble stuff, which maybe that gets fixed, maybe it doesn't. But I just think that he doesn't add as much to the offense as a lot of his proponents think. So those are my thoughts, Bill Armstrong. I would totally love to trade him. I think others around the league overvalue him, and I would want to take advantage of that, but I think they won't.
You've said in the past that you think it's possible we can get a second-round pick for Peterson. Does that still seem reasonable?
Yeah, I thought in the past they would be able to get a second round and change. I think reports leaked out, and I can't find the article. I was looking for it, that a team, maybe Arizona, maybe another team, had offered the Vikings a second-round pick and some change. In my head, it was a second and fourth. I don't know what the rumor is that they were offered. The Vikings turned them down because they were looking for a first-round pick for Peterson, and they didn't get it. I think that they probably won't get as good of an offer, but it could still be a second-round pick. Maybe it's not a second and a fourth, but it could still be a second-round pick, and that'd be great. There's some other questions in this mailbag that talk about like using it to like build up the offensive line and stuff like that. I'll address that when we get to that part of the mailbag.
Eli Vorderbruggen at Eli_Bruggen writes us, on a scale of 1 to 11, how happy were you when the Packers lost?
Probably a 10 out of 11. I was super happy, but I knew that I wouldn't be able to hold it over Packers fans because the Vikings lost the wild card round. The Packers did not. I was still really ecstatic, but back of my head I was like, but, hey, would have been nice to hold that over their heads. That's all. I'm super happy.
That's fair. I would say 12.
Yeah, that's fair too.
And partly because of how they lost.
Yeah, oh my God, yes. How beautiful was that?
Like, that was some karmic justice.
Also, I just found this out about an hour before the podcast. Did you know that the very overtime rule that Clay Matthews is complaining about is the one that the Packers voted against?
Of course it is. Because of course it is. Well, and like watching Larry Fitzgerald just like burn the entire Packers defense on the very first play of overtime.
It's like he knew what it meant to Minnesotans.
It was exactly. He was running for Minneapolis. And
appreciate you, Larry.
It was just like, well, the best part is all the Packers players and a bunch of the fans are all, sour grapes about it. And the reality is Mike McCarthy could have saved everybody the trouble just by, going for 2 and getting there and winning the game outright instead of playing for overtime. So you reap what you sow, I suppose.
A bunch of reasons to do this. Half of them in my head are analytic, and half of them are, why the hell would you put the fate of your playoff win in the hands of a coin flip, which maybe you didn't know how screwed up the coin flip was going to be. Whatever, we don't care about that.
It's a coin flip. It's predicating your ability to win the game on the next possession on a coin flip.
Right, and so, like, why wouldn't you go out or win, either way? Why wouldn't you lose or win under circumstances that are entirely under your control and go for 2? Like, I think that analytically, of course, it makes sense, but I just think that, like, from the perspective of, like, a football coach or a football player, I would totally rather be in control of that than have a coin flip determine, whether or not we were going to get the ball. And so that's like nuts to me in my head. And then there's also all of these analytic reasons and all the reasons that like a lot of people usually prop up against analytics, like, well, you have to control for the feel, you have to control for the game situation, you have to control for the personnel that you have to control for how good they are, how good you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of those actually generally swing in favor of going for 2. So, like, some of the things are like, well, why would you go for 2 when you're back to your 4th and 5th wide receiver? Well, the same reason you don't want to rely on your 4th and 5th wide receiver to lead you on a sustained drive in overtime.
Like, do you want them to catch 1 short pass, or would you rather make them try to catch 3 or 4 potentially long passes?
Right, and like momentum was in their favor. They just completed 2 Hail Marys to like tie the game, right? So like you're amped up. It turns out the Packers, even though Eddie Lacy has been pretty bad this year, the Packers are actually much better at goal-to-go situations than the average team, and better than the Arizona Cardinals, who, for how good they are on defense, are actually not as good in goal-to-go situations as the average team. So a lot of individually game-specific stuff. The Packers were running okay in that game. You have Aaron friggin' Rodgers. There's a lot of reasons to go for 2. A lot of them are analytic, and most of the reasons that you wouldn't do it from an analytic perspective are actually reasons that you should do it, especially because most of the reasons against it are like, well, you have to rely on the exact same team to drive down the field in overtime, and they don't get a second chance. So maybe rely on your team to do 1 play instead of like 8.
If they even get them, which they didn't. CT at the 16643 writes us, how many times, in your opinion, does a coin have to flip for it to be fair?
So I looked this up briefly, and by looked this up, I mean I Googled it and then like stopped caring when I saw this question hit us. And I'm sure the answer exists on the internet. Maybe if I find it by the time this show posts, we'll put it in the show notes. But like, I don't know, like enough, right? Like it has to flip like visibly like 4 or 5 times, right? So we're on there.
I would say at least once. I think the only if it was just a coin flip, if I was betting somebody $100 on a coin flip, uh, first of all, I would insist that the coin land on a table or the ground because if they catch the coin, then fewer flips.
Oh
It,
yeah,
it's,
that's fair. Yeah, that
that's
makes sense.
uh, but beyond that, as long as they don't just
Like one whole revolution, you mean, right?
exactly one revolution of the
So
coin,
like
as long as they don't
Price
do
is
what the
Right
referee did and
rules,
limply
right?
like flip it up in the air so it lands flat the way it came off his thumb, I'd be like, no, that's a redo.
Right.
But
So like,
if
because like the Price is Right on the wheel where you have to roll for $1, it has to spin at least once. So it's like
it
the
has to
same.
do one full
Yeah.
revolution, so
Right.
yeah, as long as the coin goes end over end, the rest is
Okay.
academic.
Because I was saying like 4 or 5 times half revolution. So basically 2 or 2.5
So like two
times.
revolutions, two and a
Yeah.
half.
Yeah. So we're basically in sort of the same.
It just has to flip.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough.
Judd Zolgad's hoodie writes with at least one interesting question. If Minnesota had beaten Arizona, no. Wait,
Yeah, because it was a
yeah,
3-point game against Arizona
if
on
Minnesota
Thursday
had
night.
beaten
Yeah.
Arizona and had the number 2 seed, would the NFL have played the game last Saturday in 20-degree below zero weather?
Yeah, I was thinking about this too. Dusty gave me a link to look at it from which to bounce my ideas off of. My hope is no. I think the only reasons they generally prevent a game from happening is if it's a danger to fans, which is still a possibility in like negative 20-degree weather. But I'm looking through this. I'm skimming, so I don't actually know it. But I'm looking through this list, and it looks like there's not many instances of just the cold canceling a game.
They've actually never canceled a game due to only cold. Every time that a game
Always
has been
snow.
canceled, it has either been because there was a lot of snow or,
A
in the
hurricane.
case of a Minnesota game, they anticipated a lot of snow, and so they delayed the game a day. Other than that, a hurricane, 9/11, the Kennedy assassination. Actually, no, they played after the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah,
Which,
that's famous that they chose to play. Yeah,
yeah, the commissioner of the league later regretted.
right.
It's a curious question. I agree with you. I would like to think that they would delay the game, but chances are they would probably just move it to a different stadium. Like they might just play on a neutral field on the same day.
Oh, I would hate that so much. I would rather play in negative 20-degree weather than that.
Well, exactly.
I don't know, man. Like the problem is like they've definitely played games in negative 20-degree weather before, but that was like back when we were all dumb about weather in like the 1970s. So like who knows? Like I don't think that's relevant. So I don't know. My guess is they would have.
Yeah, my suspicion is I am 99% sure they would have played the game, and I'm like 75% sure they would have played it at TCF Bank Stadium, and then 25% chance they play it on a neutral field.
I would hate that. Yeah, fair enough.
Which former Vikings/Minnesota resident should we root for this weekend? Larry Fitzgerald or Jared Allen?
Uh, mm,
I guess if we're following your example, we should bet on Fitz and then cheer for Jared Allen.
right. Well, it depends on how much you bet. I think that changes your rooting philosophy, right?
Well, my suspicion is that Allen won't really play, so I think we can root for Fitz by default. That'd be fine.
Well, since I'm rooting for the Panthers because it'd be funny to see Cam Newton win and make like haters angry. Again, I think Arizona's going to win. Cheering for Carolina is already easy enough. Cheering for Jared Allen would be super easy. Maybe he's not going to be on the field, but I'd love to see him get a ring. And to me, it's more meaningful if Jared gets a ring than if Fitz gets a ring, which he already had a shot at. Right? He didn't get one. He just had a shot at it.
Right.
And well, yeah, those like the most exciting Super Bowl ever. Right. He should have gotten it. Anyway. No, I mean it's Jared Allen, man. I love him. I was happy to see him go, but he's amazing, and he's no longer playing for the Bears. He's exciting. A lot of people don't actually like him, which is like surprising. But like, they're like, oh, he's a redneck, and which like, yeah, and he's like, oh, yeah, that makes the dumb 69 joke, which technically he's never really made the joke. He just wears the number, and everyone just kind of understands because it's Jared Allen. That's the joke.
Other people who wear his jersey make the joke.
Do they?
I mean, I've known some, I guess maybe men who are not of class and refinement, who are
I'm sure Jared Allen
Jared Allen
makes
jersey
the.
enthusiasts.
Well, okay. Oh yeah, other. I thought you meant like other NFL players wear the 69
Oh
jersey.
no, I'm not saying he's like
Oh
doing
yeah,
jersey
sure.
swaps with guys just so they can get the 69. I'm just talking about like fans that show
Oh
up to
yeah.
like
Oh
Cap
no,
City
for sure.
Tavern.
They like definitely make the 69 joke. And like I'm sure Jared Allen has privately made the 69 joke. But whatever, right? But I don't know, man. He's like Rob Gronkowski, right? Except I kind of like him more than Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski is like this clown prince, and everyone is like, well, if he was black, a lot more people would hate him for his antics. And it's like, yeah, that's probably true. That doesn't mean I hate Rob Gronkowski. Same thing with like Jared Allen. Man, he's like fun. He's kind of a doofus. He's a genuinely amazingly good person. Which like that's a big part of it, I think. Like, who cares if he's like a redneck or whatever? He builds homes for like wounded vets, and interpersonally, he's a great guy. He's great with the media. He's great with people personally. I've never heard of it's like kind of like Chad. Never heard a bad story. I've heard a lot of bad stories about athletes, and sometimes it's atypical. Sometimes they just have a jerk moment, and sometimes they're just jerks. I've never heard that about Chad. I've never heard that about Jared. So yeah, I'll cheer for Jared. Hell yeah. And he helped the Vikings win games. Like I love Fitz, but he never helped the Vikings win games.
And plus, I mean, if they were going to make a movie about the Patriots, Channing Tatum would end up playing Rob Gronkowski.
Oh, another reason to hate Rob Gronkowski. I still like him, but yeah, another reason.
Official question asker Tommy Gunn at Tommy the Gun 13 writes us with a handful of questions. I cherry picked the best ones. Would you take the first round pick for Harrison Smith this year from any of the top 5 teams?
Like, wait.
Like you trade Harrison Smith to Tennessee or Cleveland, and then you get first or second pick in the draft.
Or third, fourth, I would do that because they'd have to like draft Jalen Ramsey, who's probably not as good as Harrison Smith. Which that's saying a lot. Jalen Ramsey's super good. But Harrison Smith is a top 3 safety. You can't get that with a number 1 pick. You probably can't.
You're trading down in that situation. You pretty much have to because if you give him up, you have to draft a safety, right?
You probably do, which is probably Jalen Ramsey. Which like that sucks. I mean, Ramsey's great. He's amazing. He's probably going to be one of the best players to come out of this draft. But, like, the chances of a top 5 pick turning into a Pro Bowler are already small, right? Like, the chances of a top 5 pick being a player that you start year in, year out are like 60%. And maybe that's generous. But the chances of a top 5 pick turning into a perennial Pro Bowler, which is what in my head Harrison Smith is, even if he's not really, that's low. I would rather have Harrison Smith.
Me too. If we had to stop the Viking aspect, what would the Norse Code staff podcast about instead?
Coffee, food.
Food.
Mostly food.
Probably a lot of free form, just like asking for questions from people. So it would probably be just like a lot like Norse Code, but without the middle section.
Without the middle section, exactly.
Tim Pearson at TimTax7, TACS Tax. What are the most likely changes to happen to the O-line this offseason?
Okay, so this touches on the thing that I was actually going to talk about when I mentioned the O-line and win. The excellent question from Bill Armstrong about trading Peterson to make room for the O-line. So in my offseason plan, a lot of people were upset that I didn't change who the starting 5 on the O-line were, which a little bit my mistake. I should have clarified. These are literally just the players on the roster. And so Berger can take the job from 5. I don't care. That's not like my projection or anything like that. But I projected basically, kind of accidentally, because I didn't like project starters, but I just projected a pseudo depth chart to organize the players. That the Vikings would have Khalil, would have Fusco, would have Sullivan, would have Lodeholt, would have Mike Harris, because I re-signed Mike Harris, who's a free agent. That's a very important free agent for the Vikings to re-sign. And so I think the most likely thing to happen is 0 changes. And I know this is going to piss a lot of people off, and I think that it's the right move for the Vikings to take, making 0 changes. A lot of people are like, why wouldn't we want to change an offensive line that was one of the worst in the league? And the answer to that is obviously by making 0 changes, you change the offensive line by adding 2 people who weren't there for the entirety of the last year. There were 2 weaknesses on the offensive line. 2 weaknesses. They were, Fusco and TJ Clemmings. If Lodeholt's back, and I think that, that Achilles, that's going to be a big problem. We're going to have to determine whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to play. But I think there's maybe a 75% chance that he's going to be healthy enough to play. The most recent study that we have on Achilles injuries for football players ended in 2002. And that study concluded that of football players, 64% returned to their previous form and could play, but generally patients, because there's only 31 examples in their study, generally patients returned at 72%. And they hypothesized that the difference between the two is that football has a much greater athletic load on the body, and the bodies are bigger. That's another big thing. I think both of those things are kind of true, but another thing you have to take a look at is sample size. Like, that's one of the reasons there's a lot of variance. And I think that both of these things can be true, but if the last study concluded in 2002, it's 2016, right? It's been 14 years of medical advances, and we know that those 14 years of medical advances have already been significant with the way that we treat injuries in football. You know, players are returning from patellar tendon tears better. We know that players are returning from ACL tears better. In fact, there's been a new thing, and I can't find it right now, but there's been a new thing about how players have been returning from ACL tears better than they ever have. It used to be, you know, a 50-50 proposition, and it's not just Adrian Peterson. It's like Darrelle Revis and Jamal Charles and, you know, a bunch of players that have returned to the previous form. And so for an Achilles injury, like, that's a big problem. It's not nearly as, I don't want to say like meaningless as an ACL injury, because that's still like pretty meaningful. But it's not nearly as recoverable as an ACL injury, but it's still recoverable enough that in my head, it's probably a 75% chance that not only does he return, but he returns to the form that he had. Obviously, you've got an issue that like the last time that he played football was like in 2013, but I mean, that's kind of a different issue. It's not like he was out for the entirety of 2013 either. And he's like a top 5 right tackle in my mind. And tackles do not die at the age of 30. They continue to play. And there's a couple of tackles, some of whom have suffered Achilles injuries, like Jason Peters, who've been playing at a high level at like age 32, age 33, age 34. So one of those weaknesses is already shored up by Phil Loadhill coming back. The other weakness, Brandon Fusco had an elite year in 2013. He was a top 5 guard in 2013, right? Then he gets injured last year, right? And so we don't have, you know, the ability to, you know, say that he's definitely going to come back. But if we're giving Matt Khalil all this time, and we gave Matt Khalil a lot of time to come back, and he came back to, in my head, average form. A lot of people disagree with me that Matt Khalil was average because late in the season there were some high-profile plays that he gave up, which sucked. Like, I agree, but that's what you get with an average player, is that sometimes they're going to give up pressures more often than a very good player. You know, that, I think, like, if we're going to give Matt Khalil that time, and we did, I don't see why we wouldn't give Brandon Fusco that time. Brandon Fusco's played better than in 2013 than Mike Harris ever did, the best performing player on the line last year, in my opinion, not Pro Football Focus's opinion, but my opinion. He played better than Matt Khalil has ever played. You know, Matt Khalil was good for a rookie in 2012, right? And I know CC Norseman has pointed out there's like some, you know, opposite, like, issues in terms of who he played in 2012. But like, he played good for a rookie, but he never played as well as Brandon Fusco did. So I don't know why you wouldn't give him another year. I mentioned on the show before that I think that he might have an injury. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Maybe he was switching sides. Maybe he's secretly not good. But I think that you give him another year. Obviously, he has to compete in camp. If he loses the job to Joe Berger, that's fine, whatever. Berger's a good guard as well as a good center. And so there you go. The line problem is solved. So I think that the Vikings are not going to make a big move regarding the offensive line, because by doing nothing, not only have you already fixed one of the weaknesses automatically, but you're giving faith in someone who has shown elite levels of play over the course of an entire year. And this was a year that you couldn't say that Adrian Peterson was making him look good, or the quarterback was making him look good, because A, he had 3 different quarterbacks to work with, and B, Adrian Peterson had like an average year that year. And so I don't think Brandon Fusco looked good because of him. So, yeah, I don't anticipate them making a lot of changes. Sorry, you know, Tim Tax, I didn't mean to go off on you, because you're not like someone who's annoyed me with like the constant questions about why you didn't make O-line changes on this article, but I used your question as a jumping off point. I think they won't make many or any, but I think that they'll get a bunch of new bodies. I you know, in the article I drafted a tackle, a center, and a guard. And the center is thick and strong and is experienced playing guard and can probably play guard. And the guard that I drafted played tackle in college, so he might be able to play tackle too. So I drafted a bunch of people that can play a bunch of different positions, and a bunch of people who are really good. Like the tackle that I drafted was Spencer Drango, two-time All Big 12 offensive tackle and Outland Trophy finalist. Some people are calling him the best offensive lineman in college, right? And I don't think that's an issue. I think that if there's no changes to the offensive line, bringing in a new offensive line coach is a change. I don't think that the issue is necessarily the number of people or the people that they're going to start as of this moment in their starting five. And it's like kind of ridiculous in my head, and I know there's very smart people who disagree with me. I think Krasser's one of them. That you don't make any of those changes, but it's a bad performing offensive line. The changes have already occurred by the very nature of football because people are coming back from injury. And I think one of the problems, Joe Berger's really good at blocking, but I think one of the problems that Sullivan is extremely good, not just at communication among the line. I bet Berger's pretty good at that, but at identifying who needs to do what and telling them. And identifying who needs to do what is a really critical part of the job for a center. And I think that if TJ Clemmings had Sullivan, he would have played better this year. Yeah, I think we're not going to see as many changes along the offensive line as a lot of people think, and I think that's going to upset a lot of people, and I think whatever.
I think a lot of people are forgetting that we were missing, two of our best offensive linemen for the whole season.
A lot of people are. It's like nuts. And, one of the things that people are saying is that Berger was like a top 3 center according to PFF. That's fine. He was a top 3 blocking center, but I think that communication aspect was like a big issue. There's a lot of blown assignments.
I remember before the season started when we were actually like kind of high on TJ Clemmings because we didn't think he would see the field really this season.
Yeah, that was the reason we were really excited about him, is that he wouldn't see the field, and then
and then everybody got injured, and we were like, "Oh God, here we go."
Yeah, and we mentioned on the show like this is going to be a problem. Yeah, he's supposed to be a first-round pick. This is going to be a problem.
Talon T at TJohn06 writes us, draft safety, sign safety, or only add depth. Wouldn't you do the third thing by doing either one of the first two? At any rate.
I think what TJohn06 is saying is, do you draft a starting safety, sign a starting safety, or do you only find depth?
Draft yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well.
So I would be okay drafting Carl Joseph. I did it in the mock, but people made a pretty good point that if you're going to sign George Iloka, which is the most popular thing I think among a lot of Vikings fans to do, it's something I did in the offseason plan. Then you don't really need to draft a safety as high as you would draft Carl Joseph. It kind of depends on where he's going. He's injured, and before he got injured for the year, in the year prior to this year anyway, he was not great in coverage. This year he was great in coverage, and then he got injured. He was actually fantastic in coverage, and he got injured. But he's maybe the most physical player in the draft at any position. Pound for pound, an amazing hitter. Imagine having him and Harrison Smith on the field at the same time. And if Harrison Smith can teach Carl Joseph his magic for not drawing flags for perfectly legal hits, which a lot of safeties around the league, perfectly legal hits, draw flags anyway. If Harrison Smith can teach him that magic, I'd be all for that too.
Dude, think of the zone blitzes. Ugh.
Right? It's just brutal, right? And so that excites me actually a little bit more than George Iloka does. But if you try to sign George Iloka, you know that you can get George Iloka. And if you don't get George Iloka, then you can get maybe another safety. Maybe you could get Eric Weddle or Eric Berry. Maybe the Vikings are primed for a Super Bowl run. Maybe you can get them for only 1 or 2 years. Maybe you can get them before, they age out or something. But, I really like Carl Joseph. That is not a guarantee that the Vikings will be able to draft Carl Joseph at the place that they think he'll be. So I'm totally fine doing both. Right, I'm totally fine. You grab a guy like George Iloka, and then you grab Carl Joseph in the draft. You make them compete. George Iloka will probably win. Carl Joseph will be able to add weight along with Anthony Harris. They both can become 200-pound people together on the bench. And then you kind of evaluate where you are 2 years from now. Maybe you could trade Aloka to a team because you've got 3 or 4 really, really good safeties. Maybe you can let go of Harrison Smith because he's going to have like an $11 million contract by like 2018 or something, and have just as good safety play from Aloka and Harris or Aloka and Joseph. But I think that they should find a way to sign a really good safety in free agency and some depth. I signed Josh Robinson as a safety and Terrence Newman as a safety, which was maybe kind of outside of the box too much, but I like them. I like both of them. But I think that, as well as adding depth, I think that you should try and sign a safety who can compete to start. And there's a lot of safeties that in free agency that can do that. I mean, it's an otherwise weak free agency class, but at safety, it's pretty good. But I think that should not prevent you from trying to draft a starting quality safety. And I know every player you draft, you think like, hey, I want to draft a starting quality X or Y or Z, but like sometimes you draft people because they're really good special teams players, or you draft people with depth in mind. And I think in this case, if you find a really good safety in round 3, you could still draft him even if you sign like a starting safety. So and I'm saying that mostly because I think the Vikings have very few holes that they need to fix this year. Like maybe things go south for Teddy and you have to replace the quarterback, but obviously you're not going to do that this year. You really only need to get one more receiver because you've got Jarius Wright for a long time. You've got Stephon Diggs for a long time. And I know I'm kind of contradicting myself because I got the Vikings 3 new receivers. I got them Marvin Jones, and I got them Alshon Jeffrey, and I got Sterling Shepard. I got a little excited. But you really only need to add one receiver. You really only need to add one linebacker, a safety, and in my head, maybe the Vikings disagree, maybe a bunch of people disagree, people you can develop into starting offensive line, but you don't need to get starting offensive linemen this year. So if you've only got 3 or 4 needs, yeah, you can get a safety in round 3, for sure.
Zach Hansen at Zachman11288 writes us, what is the most annoying offseason debate? Trading Adrian Peterson? Teddy haters? Norv? Free agency / draft strategy / targets, or something else?
I want to say Teddy haters, and I think that's still the answer, but I do want to mention that, like, I invest myself too much into when people disagree with my articles, and I think everyone can agree with that. I invest myself way too much in that. I mean, it's coming out on the podcast. But so like it drains me and it prevents me from being able to write like another piece. And so maybe that should be the answer, but it really is just like it's Teddy haters. I mean, like, he played well this year. What do you want? Jesus.
No, it's definitely Teddy haters.
I mean, you stare reality in the face and you deny it. That's like obnoxious. And it's like somebody that I'm emotionally invested in as a Vikings fan, that I'm professionally invested in as someone I predicted to be the best quarterback of that draft, which still could be true. Derek Carr is great, but I mean, he didn't play well in the second half of the season. I mean, relative to himself. He didn't, weird.
Whatever. So here my feeling is that, like, you can make a case for either trading all day or not trading him. You can make a case that Norv was, too conservative with the run first offense, or that, he did things approximately right. Free agency and draft strategy, that stuff is, just kind of starting, so it hasn't gotten annoying yet. But there is no rational argument for Teddy haters other than we didn't win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and like, it's so weird because, and I mentioned this like a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, but there's this weird overlap between people who dislike Teddy Bridgewater and people who are fervent believers in quarterback wins. But the 2 quarterbacks that they're propping up as better than Teddy have fewer wins, Derek Carr and Blake Bortles. And so, like, it's like weird. And that's not like an I got you moment, because they are separate arguments. And like, when you argue with one person, you don't know if they're in the camp of a quarterback win enthusiast. But like, I mean, the Vikings won 11 games this year, and it's really difficult to do that with a bad quarterback.
The over/under was 6.5, and they won 11 games without 2 of their best players on the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, Teddy was the most pressured quarterback in Pro Football Focus's history of tracking quarterbacks. A lot of that maybe was his fault. But I think some of it was his fault, some of it was on Norv, and a lot of it was on this offensive line and to some extent the pass protection of the running backs.
But dude, coming out and leading a team,
he has like an average.
Wins, like,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
he's an
especially with
average yards
Adrian
per
Peterson
attempt.
getting
That's
you a
great.
reliable 2 to 2.5 yards a carry. Like,
Right. Yeah, I mean, he has an average yards per attempt, 7.1, I think, and that's great considering the offensive line and the play calling. And people are hung up on these touchdown numbers and these interception numbers, and when you like break down like how those numbers came to be, it's like not really that big a deal.
Thaddeus Maximus at Skull Viking 75 writes us, Arif, what's your beef with the Bee Gees in Finding Nemo?
I have no idea, but since I evidently have beef with them, screw them both.
The Bee Gees are bad. No one should listen to them. Like some music is better left in the past. Some of it
Actually,
ages well.
you're actually right about the Bee Gees. I do like Finding Nemo though, and I thought I wouldn't like it. I resisted watching it for a long time.
Oh, Finding Nemo is great. Like, and actually, Finding Nemo was one of the like first Pixar movies that kind of employed the now trademark Pixar formula of making a movie that appeals to kids so much they want to watch it like 20 times in one day, but also
Yeah,
including just enough like adult humor so that if you're like trying to do housework or keep the kids from killing each other or whatever you're doing while they're watching it, you can like half be paying attention to something else and fade in and out and still chuckle.
yeah, no, it was they did it masterfully. They've done it in like a couple of films prior to that, but yeah, they did pretty masterfully in that one.
Nick at the Real Sandbun writes us, why isn't Rudolph excelling in this offense? How much blame for it do you give to him or I presume that means Teddy Bridgewater or
Right.
Norv Turner? What needs to change for the Vikes to have a better run defense next? Oh, these are different questions. Okay.
Different
So why
questions,
isn't
right?
Rudolph excelling in this offense?
I think it's mostly Rudolph and his issues creating separation. A lot of people talk about how he's great with his hands and he's got, he does a good job of contested catches. And like that was definitely true when he was a rookie. I don't know that his hands have actually been all that impressive, the last couple of years when he's actually been on the field. But it's difficult for him to get separation, and that's really frustrating because he has like a lot of tools where he should be able to get separation. Maybe he's not physical enough at getting separation because he's not going to do it with the speed. He's used to having speed, by the way. I mean, he had it in college. And so, like, maybe that's the reason. He had to change his route running style for North Turner and the North Turner offense. Maybe that's the reason. I don't really know. But I don't really think that the reason has to do with Teddy because when I was breaking down Teddy film, there weren't a lot of instances where Rudolph made sense as an open read or receiver. I mean, there's still obviously instances like there were for every receiver where Teddy didn't make the optimal decision or whatever, and Rudolph was one of them. But very often it didn't feel like Rudolph was the primary receiver on those plays.
And it
So I
seems
think
like
it's
Teddy
mostly
has
Rudolph.
like a pretty strong predilection against throwing into contested catch situations. Like he would much rather throw it away or throw it to somebody that's clearly open that he can see rather than, wing it and pray.
Yeah, and I think some of that Teddy has to train himself out of. I think you're right that he's conservative in those situations, but I think some of it is also like, who do the Vikings have that win at contested catches? Like seriously, they're all bad at it. Even Rudolph, and it's so frustrating because he used to be so good at it, and this year he just wasn't good at it. So like, yeah, but I mean, like every time Teddy does give someone a chance for contested catches, they fail much more than typical NFL receivers should fail. So I get why he's conservative. Maybe he should be less conservative, but Jesus freaking Christ.
What needs to change for the Vikes to have a better run defense next year?
Be healthy. It's a
Yeah,
pretty good run defense. So
it's pretty good. If Everson Griffin and
uh,
Linval Joseph play every game, that would be really great.
yeah, if Anthony Barr, Linval Joseph, and Everson Griffin play every game, I think that's it. You've sewn it up. You've got a really good run defense.
There you go. That actually sounds really good. Feels good to think about too. How will moving indoors impact the Vikings? Probably not much, huh?
Especially
Maybe
not the first year. Home field advantage when you move to a new stadium, even after you control for weather effects, is actually really good. Because hey, you're the only one who played in the stadium before, and it diminishes for division rivals over time. Because I mean they become familiar with it, and whatever creates home field advantage diminishes. But yeah, I think it's not going to affect him that much. Maybe the punts will be better. Maybe Teddy will throw better. But I doubt it. I feel like any offensive gains that you make or punting gains that you make will be offset by like the theoretical disadvantages of not being able to play in the cold for the defense. But I think mostly it'll wash. Like new stadium, you actually get more advantages whether or not it's indoors or outdoors. than you would think otherwise.
I have a follow-up question to that. We've heard a fair amount about the state-of-the-art like training and locker room facilities at the new stadium. How much do you think that will impact, one, current Vikings morale, and two, the interest in players from other teams, perhaps in free agency, wanting to come to Minnesota as opposed to getting a similar offer from, an equally skilled team with a crappier stadium?
That's super interesting. I think that it has an unintended psychological effect. I think that players wouldn't know that they're being influenced by that, kind of like how, and this impacts high school recruits more, so the analogy is not perfect, but kind of like how high school recruits will often be impacted by the facilities, even though they say that the only reason that they would ever go to a school is because of the fit and the academics, and maybe they genuinely believe that. But
well, you say that, but you can't walk into Ralph Engelstedt Arena and not be affected by it.
Right, exactly. And so I think, I think that will have like a psychological effect that's hard to measure. I think that you're right. I think that did you say there's going to be new training facilities at the stadium? If so, that would be interesting and nice. But yeah, no, I think that everything that goes into it, I think that like psychologically, I mean, like these new like locker rooms, these are probably the best locker rooms in the NFL. I don't know. They're certainly the newest. I mean, and given that there's a sense of ownership, like, yeah, I think that'll positively affect you as a player. I think it'll positively affect you as a potential free agent recruit. Yeah.
Just for clarity's sake, the new training facilities will not be at the stadium, but the team just finalized a land purchase in Egan.
Oh, Egan or Eden.
Where Egan.
Egan, okay.
And the new training facilities will be there, but they're getting new training facilities to go alongside their new stadium, which I think will be awesome. I am the kind of person who would be very easily influenced by that, and am completely upfront about that, like, pliability. I don't know. I like nice things.
I mean, I'm glad you're upfront about it.
Brennan Smith at SmithBrennan22 writes us, any player comparisons for Josh Doctson? Contested catchability seems DeAndre Hopkins-ish. DeAndre Hopkins-esque.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really generous comparison. I don't mean generous in like the sarcastic Josh Doctson's not good way, but like DeAndre Hopkins is really friggin' good. So maybe DeAndre Hopkins from like a style perspective, but Doctson is actually a little bit smaller than Hopkins. Because he's like 5'11"? No, he's not. That's his teammate. I don't know. He's got great contested catchability, and I love it, but he's not as big as Alshon Jeffrey. In fact, Laquan Treadwell is the guy that's like is like the one that he's 6'2", 195. Doctson, yeah. Laquan Treadwell is the one that's grabbing Alshon Jeffrey comparisons. 6'2", 195 is actually probably pretty close to DeAndre Hopkins. I don't know. I might have to watch more. I think Hopkins is probably a much better route runner, but then two people just compared him to Michael Crabtree, whose like sole skill is route running because he's not that fast. I think Doxson's great at separation. He's got to improve in route running, but he's great at separation, especially at the break. So yeah, maybe let's go with DeAndre Hopkins. Maybe not as good, but I like it because like Hopkins, maybe he's a better route runner, but he wins by winning at the catch point, both by being physical at the catch point, by being strong and having great hands, which is what Doctson has, and by separating from the receiver or from the defensive back at the right point, which isn't the same thing as good route running. But at the right point to get to the ball by themselves. And Doxson's very good at that, at creating separation. And that's what, Hopkins is good at. Like, he controls the red line, which is something that Pete Carroll likes a lot. The line between the numbers and the sideline. The invisible line. Yeah, let's go with Hopkins.
Zen Cupid at ZenDBP reappears from the top of the show to ask, not really Vikings related, but what is your take on the Carson Wentz Bison hype?
I'm biased as a Bison hater because I grew up in Grand Forks, North Dakota, much to my chagrin, probably. But I hate NDSU for no super rational reason, except that like UND is in theory a rival to them. I mean, they're definitely a rival to them, like academically and stuff, and probably in other sports. Women's basketball, for example, huge rivalry, kind of weird.
But not in
Um,
football. Not
but in
anymore, at
football,
least.
not in football. Well, not anymore. You're right.
So
Although
I,
they just restarted their Nickel Trophy series, so we'll see if that rivalry ever
oh
materializes into a
God.
UND win. Right. Although it's not the Nickel Trophy anymore, I think. So technically, UND is in perpetuity the Nickel Trophy holder. Eat it. Uh,
Butchery. And you know, with
but
as long as we get the Nichols Trophy, I am okay cheering for Bison football. I will always cheer for Fighting Hawks hockey. And NDSU cannot hold a candle to the strength of that program.
oh, you're not even close.
And what does NDSU got? Agricultural sciences, whatever. Bring on the only law school and med school in the state. Go
And the
UND.
best aerospace program in the country.
Well, some rednecks from Florida might disagree with you, but they're also wrong.
But yeah, so Carson Wentz is a very talented quarterback. I think maybe a little bit too much is made of his arm strength. It's stronger than average. It'll get everything done. He makes all the NFL throws, but it's not good enough for him to overcome mechanical flaws in the same way that Cam Newton's can be. Like if you have to throw off your back foot because of pressure or because you have to throw from an awkward angle. Cam Newton, his arm strength, Matt Stafford, his arm strength. Those have both helped. I think that Carson Wentz has above average arm strength, but he doesn't have the arm strength that a lot of people are attributing to him. And which is fine. Like, right, it's like it's very good. It's VG arm strength. It's in the top half of the NFL. But when you look at it from that perspective and you think about that as one of his biggest tools, I think that the case from as a first round pick kind of erodes a little bit. He is a fantastically athletic quarterback. There's a really good piece that Justice Mosqueda wrote, friend of the show, on Bleacher Report about Carson Wentz, which I'll link. But I think when I was watching Carson Wentz run, it reminded me of a faster Cardale Jones, where it was like, this dude is like clearly good at running, but like not used to it from a football perspective, which is like weird. His like body was kind of out of control. I know Mosqueda compared him to Jake Locker, who's faster, right? So like Carson Wentz is like between Jones and Locker in terms of speed. But like Locker, when he ran like kind of out of control, and like he wasn't like completely aware of like everything his body was doing when he was running. And I think the same is true of Carson Wentz. So he's not the same kind of runner that like Cam Newton and Russell Wilson, and to some extent like Blake Bortles, which is the comparison a lot of people have for him. I think that's true, but I think the two biggest problems with Carson Wentz, the first one is actually pretty fixable, but it'll take a year or two, and that's his footwork. I think it's really bad, actually, and he'll flatten his base or narrow his base, and he won't generate torque and stuff like that, and that creates mechanical problems. It'll create accuracy problems. It'll create a lot of problems. And you need to fix that before you can put him on the field. And I think the second thing is he goes through his progressions, and he's certainly willing to do that. And sometimes he does it really quickly, but a lot of times he does it really, really slowly. And I think this is the same problem I had with Mettenberger, who is maybe not a great comparison for Wentz, but they share this trait where they just take too long to make decisions sometimes. And that's like a fatal problem in the NFL. And so Wentz can deal with it a lot better than Mettenberger can, because he can move in the pocket. He can take hits maybe even better than Mettenberger, much better than Mettenberger can. And he can throw on the run. And he can throw from like multiple arm angles too, despite not having like literally the best arm strength in the NFL. Despite only having above average arm strength, he can throw from like multiple arm angles. But that's just going to catch up to you. So unless he can improve his processing speed, I just cannot see him as a first-round pick. And processing speed, like the ability to play under pressure, which I think Wentz can do when there's pass rush pressure, the ability to play at a faster pace is like about as fatal as the ability to play under pressure. And I think that if you can't do either, you may drop a lot in the draft, and I think that you could do pretty poorly. But those are my impressions from having watched an unnecessary amount of NDSU games with a hater's eye. If I did study a quarterbacks this season, which I probably will not do, I could probably produce a more accurate, maybe similarly detailed, but maybe more accurate scouting report of Carson Wentz. But that's my idea. I don't think that he's a first-round pick, but I think that he's got a lot of tools. I think that an NFL team will fall in love with him. It's just a question of where they fall in love with him. If it's in the third round, I think that that's a great place for him to get drafted. I think that's a really good, appropriate fit for who he is. And, he's super smart. He's got super high character. He's got a great build. He's got a lot of tools. Well, that processing speed, I think there's a problem.
So I had never heard of this website until today. Rookie Scouting Portfolio, MattWaldmanRSP.com.
Amazing. I love Matt Waldman.
So amazing. If you go there, there'll be a link to this particular film breakdown in the show notes. But Matt Waldman and Mark Schofield, a lawyer turned football journalist / analyst, break down last year's FCS championship game and only focus on Carson Wentz.
Yeah, no, Matt Waldman does the RSP film room every so often, and it's just phenomenal stuff. You learn so much about the game and evaluating players just from listening to them. You don't have to learn about the specific player either, although you will. But you learn so much about evaluation. You learn so much about the game. You learn so much about the individual positional requirements, because he doesn't just do it for Carson Wentz. In this video, he does, but he does it for every position, every player.
Not every position. But not every position is featured. You can, purchase, more detailed analysis or whatever. But just the free site.
Well, the film room is every position is available. The rookie scouting portfolio, the actual document, which I pre-order every year because it's $2 cheaper to pre-order, features offensive skill players because it has a dynasty focus. You purchase it if you're a dynasty player, and so it'll have super detailed scouting reports, amazingly detailed scouting reports on like 400 players. Which doesn't even make sense. It's way more players than will be drafted. I love it. It's amazing.
So I just had, I watched parts of the Carson Wentz film breakdown, but I just had most of the hour on kind of in the background as I was setting up the show notes for the show, and I am now smarter about football and college player analysis just from half listening to one episode. So check this one out, because what I gathered from it was that Carson Wentz is, like you were saying, great build, very athletic, stronger than average arm. When he runs, he does the thing that a lot of young guys coming out of college and coming to the NFL don't do, which is kind of commit to the run. Like,
that's
when
true.
he decides he's going to go out of the pocket, he goes out of the pocket and he goes for the first down. He doesn't hesitate in the pocket or contemplate, continuing to throw downfield. He protects the ball and takes off.
And he actually does a really good job protecting the ball. Like I mentioned that he doesn't have a lot of body control when running, and that doesn't really apply to. He protects the ball pretty well when he runs.
Yeah, a lot of that is because his feet and his hips look weird when he runs. He takes kind of silly routes, and he could be faster, but the overarching thing is he does a lot of things that are difficult to teach well. And a lot of the things he does badly can be kind of coached into him.
Yeah, and I think, like I said about the footwork thing, I think that's something you can do. Yeah. I don't know about the processing speed, if that can be coached into you. Maybe it can. The reason probably that his processing speed is not up there, with like Teddy Bridgewater or Derek Carr, is because he played in the FCS. So, even scout teams are significantly faster. So, maybe, his processing speed could be coached up.
Well, and he won the national title, 3 years in a row?
Yeah, that's not bad.
Just doing it's not bad. Doing it with his limited processing speed and overweening athleticism.
Yeah, and I think I think that the reason that Zach Mettenberger, you couldn't project an increase in his processing speed when he was at LSU is because he was playing at LSU. He's playing in the SEC against maybe not NFL quality teams, but teams with a lot of NFL quality players playing pretty quickly, and he couldn't speed up. And at NDSU, he didn't need. He won 3 national championships. He didn't need to. And we actually saw this in his game against Montana. The first time it seemed like he needed to. But yeah, that's something that actually could come with time. Unlike most of the time when you look at quarterbacks who don't have a trait that seems not teachable. So yeah, for sure.
And both Waldman and Schofield made a point to note that Wentz's existing style would fit very well in a Gary Kubiak offense. I mean, I know Brock Osweiler is supposed to be the second coming,
So there's a
but
good piece that I'm going to link in the show notes, written by a guy I respect a lot, Derek Clausen, who writes a lot about quarterbacks. He says that despite Brock Osweiler's pretty good numbers, which maybe they're pretty good, I haven't actually looked at them this season, maybe he's not the answer. So, hey, Denver, Carson Wentz.
I support that. And frankly, my belief that Brock Osweiler is the answer is mostly based on him having the same relationship to Peyton Manning that Aaron Rodgers had to Brett Favre and Tom Brady had to Drew Bledsoe. That he just sat on the bench while an old guy who, well, maybe it's different for Rodgers and Favre because Favre was uncoachable and probably cannot coach. We covered that last week. But
That's why he needs to coach.
I know. I would watch that reality show multiple times.
Right.
But I genuinely believe that Manning is a better teacher than Favre, and I want to believe that Osweiler has learned something about how to run a 2-minute offense and how to visually break down defenses and defensive alignments with all that time that he spent sitting on the bench while Peyton Manning had, 2 great years and then 2 really bad ones. His physical prowess is a little less impressive.
You don't say.
So I'm really, really hoping that the
But you play basketball.
Imparted... Really? I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Let me look this up real quick.
Well, at any rate, I want to believe that Brock has the football acumen to, play smart, but I am not convinced that he has the athleticism to compete with, other top-tier quarterbacks in today's NFL. Because, now you either have to be like a hyper-accurate, fast decision maker like Teddy Bridgewater, or
He was recruited to play basketball. I don't know if he played it in college.
Okay. Or you have to be somebody like Cam Newton. You have to be able to run and throw and also push past people when you run.
Yeah.
And then there's like a small carve out for old guys like Peyton and Carson Palmer and to a lesser extent Tom Brady who, just are so in tune with their offenses and have been doing this for so long and they're just, naturally athletic passers that they can just, for the most part, stay in the pocket and throw the ball. And I don't know what category Brock fits into. Hopefully it's the first one. But if he doesn't work out, I would be totally okay with the Broncos drafting Carson Wentz.
Depending on where they draft him. Because it sounds like he has not just first-round hype, but top 5 pick hype. And I can't.
What?
I can't get behind that. No, for sure. I think Daniel Jeremiah said something. I know.
No, so he's going to end up in Tennessee. No, actually he won't because they just drafted Marcus Mariota.
So I believe Dallas is coaching the what is it?
No, he's going to go to Cleveland. No.
Some people, because Dallas is like the 4th pick, right? Some people are saying that Dallas, who is coaching Carson Wentz at the Senior Bowl, want him, and they won't be able to get him at pick number 4. So he could go to Cleveland. He could go not to Tennessee. They've got Marcus, but the other one, because there's like 2 other teams that could draft a quarterback ahead of them. Jeff Risdon at the Shrine game mentioned that one of the things that he learned talking to people there is that Carson Wentz may be able to go before Dallas can pick a quarterback at number 4. So top 5 hype, top 3 hype. Daniel Jeremiah has hyped him. I know it's either McShay or Kuiper at ESPN that have put them in their top 7. He definitely has top 5 hype. And when I say I'm pretty comfortable selecting him in the 3rd round, I am disagreeing with a ton of people who.
See, I would say 2nd round or maybe low 1st. I think he would do well being drafted where Teddy was drafted 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's not like a bad model, I guess. And maybe when I think about it, Andy Dalton, Colin Kaepernick, they were 2nd round picks, and if I think about it like that, and who, like Mettenberger and Fales were 6th-round picks. And if I think about, Mallett was a 3rd-round pick, I think. If I think about where people were selected and compare him to them, maybe I'd put him more as a 2nd-round pick than a 3rd-round pick, but, like, certainly not a top 5 in my head.
Man, that'd be rough if he ends up in, like, well, I guess not Houston, but Cleveland. Is there any chance that Tennessee drafts him just so they can trade him? Probably not.
No, I mean, they would just trade down, right? If he's available and people want him, they would just trade the pick so they can select him. So
they can pick more, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's our take is cool on the Carson Wentz hype. Last question. Nathan at Nath Class writes us, did you guys know that the Vikings hold the record for most playoff losses? It's 28.
Screw you, Nathan.
You must be a Packers fan. We don't take kindly to being trolled in our mailbag. And that is why you've been singled out for public shaming.
To read it out loud.
Exactly.
Well, for public shaming.
You have been singled out for public shaming. I did not know that. That's not a question.
That's not a question. At best, a rhetorical question. Not in the spirit of the mailbag. Nath Class.
Exactly. And if you come back next week and write us about Super Bowl wins, well, we will relegate you to the dustbin of history. As will be appropriate.
Doesn't sound like you're going to kill him.
I'm not going to kill him. I'm just going to wish for him to be a really bad parent. Teach his kids some really bad lessons.
Exactly. See, a totally different... I'm glad you've come around to this, Dusty.
Oh, I'm still upset with you. I just wanted to, call back to the lottery episode, which
and regrettably none of us won. And you did it in a way that agrees with me, so great. Oh, yeah, and none of us won the lottery.
So you'll take it?
None of us won the lottery, probably.
No, I didn't win.
That's exactly what you'd say if you won. Also, we know that nobody in Colorado won, so...
Well, yeah, exactly, but I really didn't. I heard rumors that one of the California winners is already dead of a cocaine overdose.
No, that's definitely just a rumor.
But if we're being fair, I mean, that seems like a reasonable way for a lottery winner to go.
Yeah, I'm not saying that that's unlikely, but I just feel like it just maybe like 5 months out or whatever.
Well, they can't disburse the money yet. Like, did he just spend all the money he currently has?
I mean, how many drug dealers take IOU, or debt?
But if you win the lottery and you have like $5,000 in the bank,
well, obviously
comfortably withdraw it all and be like, well, I'm not going to need this. And realistically, you only need even if your dealer is like a real jerk, you probably only need like $1,000 worth of cocaine before you overdose, right? Like that's got to be like Scarface style, right?
Yeah, you don't need a ton of your lottery winnings as a percentage to overdose on cocaine. That's true. No. I'm wondering though, dealers want you alive. They'll give you advice. If someone just won the lottery and was like, give me all the cocaine, as a dealer, you want the guy who won the lottery as a connection. For sure, 100%. As a dealer, you got to be like, I cannot sell you that much.
Do you?
Well, yeah, obviously, because a live customer continues buying cocaine.
That's true, but the longer you have a relationship with a customer, the more likely it is that the police will be wise to you. And it's not like a lottery winner is going to be living a private life unless he lies to everyone he knows about not winning the lottery.
Well, you as a drug dealer know that the lottery winner won the lottery. That's part of the calculation. So yeah, they're not living a private life. You're right. They're telling the freaking drug dealer that they won the lottery.
Which is the last person you should tell that you won the lottery.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, I got to the super special stuff straight from Kyrgyzstan. It's the purest.
Exactly. Peruvian flake. But it smells like baking soda.
Yeah, well, that's what the good stuff smells like. Also,
that's what they're doing in Peru.
Smells like.
Well, then you run the risk of the lottery winner calling your bluff and actually going to Peru.
Oh, wow, that's nuts. Yeah, you have to choose a country that's hard to get to for a lottery winner. So Kyrgyzstan, actually.
Well, we should write a movie. This seems like a compelling story that could be told.
About a lottery winner who wants to do coke? I feel like that movie's already kind of happening.
Not a lottery winner. Mostly just about like like businessmen who want to sell it.
That's
been Hollywood's like
look, man,
obsession.
My understanding / relationships, which I may or may not have with drug dealers, are that they want you to live. That's all I'm saying.
That's true. If the movie Pulp Fiction is any indication, they always want you to live, especially if you bring over some whack overdosing chick when you're just like hanging out with your wife.
He just didn't want any trouble. That's all. That's different. It wasn't about a business relationship at that point. It was about staying in business because, oh my God, someone's going to die at my house.
Right. This fool crashed into my garage. It's really bad. Well, anyway, I only brought it up that I did not win the lottery to suggest that those of you who enjoy the show, check out our website at norsecodepodcast.com and maybe think about becoming a monthly sponsor, NPR style. Click our Patreon link or just go straight there, patreon.com/norsecode, and become a recurring sponsor of literally any amount, as long as it's at least $1 a month. And that'll go a long way towards making sure we can keep the lights on and the system humming all through the off season. We're in pretty good shape, but you know it would be cool to be able to have a copy of the rookie scouting portfolio that James and Arif and I could all. Well, I guess Arif already has one, but one for me and James to refer to throughout the season, and some other bits and pieces of work that people in the football blogging community have done and deserve to be paid for their hard work. And so if we're going to continue to do hard work on your behalf, we would like to use some of theirs and, compensate them appropriately. So your contributions will go to, making sure that all that happens. Check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Daily Norseman. DailyNorseman.com hosts all of our episodes. That is one of the first places you can find the show posted. The best way to subscribe, though, is with iTunes or, to a lesser extent, Stitcher. Soon, I haven't gotten the email saying that we're officially on, but soon Google Play Music will be hosting podcasts, including Norse Code. So those are all the best ways, because then as soon as the episode is uploaded, which is usually very early in the morning, thanks to our intrepid producer James, it appears in your feed, and you can get right to the old #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. Do you have any parting shots before we call it an episode? Anything you want to promote or indicate that you have not already?
Nope. I think we're good.
Well, all right then. We will hopefully be back next Wednesday with a panel show previewing the old Super Bowl and potentially getting into some free agency and draft discussion, plus whatever Vikings news and league news we deem worthy of discussion, as well as, of course, the mailbag. So thanks for listening to episode 117 of Norse Code. And until next week, our formula is this: keep Teddy alive. We'll see you then.
Norse Code is the official podcast of the Daily Norseman SB Nation blog and is produced with cooperation from Pompous Jerk Productions. Pompous Jerk Productions. Attitude with attitude. The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of their contributors and do not reflect official positions of the Minnesota Vikings, SB Nation, the Daily Norseman staff, or PJP. No information in this podcast should be construed as gambling advice. Please obey all local gaming laws.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.